It's Friday, April 7th, 2023. Start out with our normal shill segment bit. So you can go to patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare. Support the show there. You can go over to the show homepage and click on the PayPal link if you prefer that method. You can still, as far as I know, use the code OZONE to get 2 months free on Libsyn. And in every show, every Friday show, in the show notes, you will see a Linktree link for all the stuff that I do, artwork-wise and everything else. So you can click that. You'll be taken to a page that has it in a nice summary in the center. So, onward with March Mammal Madness. So last time, we picked the semi...
I just realized it's April. Sorry, go on.
Oh, yeah, it is. So we had picked the first and second round winners, and then we had made our selections for the third round, which would break it into the the final 8. Well, they say final 4. I don't know what 8 is supposed to be called, but we'll say that 8 semifinalists. So
8?
for the sure, I don't know. There probably is an official name. I couldn't care less. The Mighty Stripes bracket. Let's see. You had picked for the semis. You had picked the Dolphin to win in the matchup between Okapi and Dolphin. I picked Okapi, and you picked the Hyena to beat the Kudu, and I picked the Kudu, so we picked opposites. In the first matchup, the Okapi versus Dolphin, the Okapi won. So that would be me, winner on that one. And then the Kudu won the second one, so each won one. So each of us won one. So now it is our next selection will be Okapi versus Kudu. What would you like to pick?
Are these both just big birds?
Are they both birds? I thought one was... Isn't Okapi hold on, I gotta look up what the Okapi is.
I don't remember what they are either. You know, one of the Okapi's the weird zebra.
Yeah, that's the weird horse thing.
You know, the only animal that stuck with me from that whole thing?
Yeah.
We did the other day? Was the bulldog bat.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't know why. I already know it. So it's the Okapi versus the what?
Versus the Kudu. So they're both big, kind of land
kudu.
animals.
Always the Kudu.
Yeah. Let's see.
Kudu is a bad.
You know what? I'm gonna stick with my guy. So I'll call this MS. We'll say Final 4 because that's what it would end up being. You are selecting because this will comprise the Final 4. So I will stick with Okapi because I'll stick with the horse that got me here, or horse-like animal. And you will go with the Kudu. Okay, perfect. So that's for Mighty Stripes. Moving on to Itty Bitty Comeback City. Let's see. Oh, we did not pick. So we had stopped. We did, I think, the top 2. So we did not pick. All right, I'm not going to look at the results. Hold on. I gotta cover it. All right, I'm going to cover it. So I'm not looking. So
avert your eyes.
All right, hold on. You know what? I'm going to shrink this window down because I did keep the former bracket, which did not have this stuff entered. So I'm glad I kept this. Okay, so in this, all right, so I have our picks. So we did pick from the whole bracket for the Itty Bitty Comeback City ones. So of those, Let me see what the winners are in that particular thing. Okay, so hold on a minute. I'm going to cover this with this. I'm going to be fair about it. I'm not lying. I'm not looking. Even if I did, I have such a bad memory I would have forgotten by now. Okay, so verse in C. So it was Shrew Mole for me, Sea Otter for you, and wait a minute. That doesn't match that up. Did I pick the wrong things? Did I put the wrong things? Shrew Mole. Oh! I'm sorry. Yeah. No. I've got it. Hold on. It was Sea Otter versus Shrew Mole. Yes. Okay. And you picked Sea Otter, and I picked the Shrew Mole. And the winner of that was, hold on, let me move this just enough that I can see the winner. Okay. So the winner was the Sea Otter. So you win that one. So that's you. I lost that one. And then in between the grasshopper mouse and the... Oh, no, we both picked the mouse. And the mouse won. So we both win. So we both picked mouse. Sorry, I'm just tallying up the winners here. If I had really been thinking about it, I would have done this much better. Okay, the next one was the silver pika versus the Sibri dwarf lemur. You took the lemur, I took the pika. The winner was the... Between the lemur and the pika was the lemur. So you win that one, and I lose that one. Bear with me. Okay. And then between the... Oh, we both picked the Mara versus the chipmunk, and the Mara won. We both win that one. So 2 winners there. Okay. So winners. And then it was the Itjarijari. I'm mispronouncing, I'm sure. Versus the silky anteater. You went silk, I went mispronunciation, and the mispronunciation wins. The itch won, and the anteater bit it. So anteater down, and then we both picked the dik-dik, and the dik-dik won both times. So both of us win there. I'll eventually tally this up to see what the final is. And then you took the bulldog bat. I took Thor's shrew. Who won that one? Oh, you win that one. Bulldog beat the shrew, so Thor goes down to the bulldog. So Thor lost to a dog. And then it was Hyrax versus Jerboa. I picked Hyrax, you picked Jerboa. You lose, I win. Hyrax took that one, and Jerboa loses that one. Okay, so now for the semis in that one, let's take a look here. That would be... Let me move this slightly over so I can see what it's going to be. Okay, so it is, let's see, it was the otter versus, hold on, I got to look at this thing correctly. Otter versus the mouse. So otter, because you picked otter. So otter, you picked the 2 winners. Otter versus mouse.
Oh, otter.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with otter as well. So I'll say otter, and you will say otter. Okay, and yeah, that's kind of an easy one. The next set would be the dwarf lemur, which against the Mara. We both picked the Mara last time. You did not take, or you took the lemur, but that lost.
I'll take the dwarf lemur. The thing's got big eyes.
Yeah, I kind of lean towards the leaning towards the lemur myself. Then we've got the Itjarijari versus the dik-dik. Oh boy, this is a naming nightmare. I'll take the dik-dik.
What's the other one again?
The Itjarijari.
I'll take the one you can't pronounce.
Okay.
Just to get you to keep having to say it.
Itjarijari. I mean, it's probably pronounced something like Jerry, like something easy, and I'm just overthinking it.
Yeah, it's
and
like
then
Jeff.
Finally, the bulldog bat versus the rock Hyrax. I'm going with the Hyrax.
The bulldog bat.
All right, so you're taking bulldog.
I haven't forgotten that. For some reason, the face of that thing has really stayed with me.
Now, just because I want to line these up, we're going to go ahead and see. I'm going to uncover those winners now, so hold on. All right, let me move this over slightly enough. Okay, so in that round between the... What was it? The otter versus the otter versus the, what did I say the otter was facing? The mouse?
The mouse, isn't it?
Yeah, mouse won. So we both
against
lose on
the
that
otter?
One. Yeah, it lost.
That's some fucking bullshit.
I'm
That's
just
what that
saying,
is.
It lost. What can I tell
I
you?
don't know what numbers they're putting there, but that is some bullshit.
Hey, man, surprises happen.
I disagree with that upset.
You can disagree with whatever you want.
I
We
mean,
both
I think
lost,
it's
so
like
it's clearly not me swinging the vote here.
I mean, a lot of the other ones I'm like, whatever, but come on. The otter would fucking make toast out of that lemur. I remember that mouse.
Tell you. Well, guess what?
Mm-hmm.
And then we lost on our next pick. We both picked the Mara, and the Mara went down to the lemur. So, okay. Jesus Christ. So far, we're even. Or yeah, we picked the same things up until this point. Oh, I win on the Dick. So I've got that one for me.
Wait, what did the Dick beat?
The Dick beat the what do you call it? The Itjari. You fucking asshole. The Itjarit. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, the points really don't matter. It's going to matter who wins at the end. I mean, if we get tied, but we won't tie probably unless we pick the same thing. And then finally, the Bulldog Bat was defeated by the Hyrax. So there again, I win.
That's a shame.
So yeah. All right. So now it is down to these four. So it is the. Let's see here. Hold on a minute. It is the. What did I say? The grasshopper mouse versus the Mara. So what do you want to take for that? I think I'm going to go with the Mara. No, I'm going to go with the mouse.
Oh, isn't the grasshopper mouse the one that kills scorpions?
I don't. Maybe you.
Hold on.
You may have said that. That might be the one you were talking about. I'm going to go with the mouse just because it's small.
Well,
so
if it's the one I'm thinking, yes, the grasshopper mouse. I'll take him. He's the one that kills scorpions.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So hold on. All right, mouse for each of us. Then it is mouse versus Mara, and then it is Dick versus the Rock Hyrax. I'm gonna stick with Dick.
I'll give it to the Hyrax.
All right, Hyrax. All right, that's for that section. So okay, so that brings us down to the animal engineers. Let me move my window here so I've got the right stuff. All right, so we did not pick semis for that, so we're going to do the semis first, and then we'll just do the results. So let me put my name, and we'll put your name. Okay. So in that one, we both picked the eagle versus the fly. Unsurprisingly, the eagle won. And then let's see. So that one's a split. We don't care. Then I picked an octopus versus pufferfish. The pufferfish won, which was mine.
Oh, so that is some bullshit.
No, it's not. A pufferfish spikes. If you spike the octopus in the face, it dies.
You're saying that spikes beats intelligence?
Yes. You can be really smart and get poisoned to death. Look, even the smartest person can trip over their shoelace and go down a flight of stairs. You would agree.
Well, so can someone with spikes.
Okay, well, but what I'm saying is, in this case, the dummy won. So, moving on, the Paleocaster versus the Trapdoor Spider. I took the one with the cool name. You took the spider. I win. Cooler name wins. Thank you very much. It's always going to beat anything else.
I really want to know what kind of logarithm they're using.
Well, I'm not going to go into all that because it will be a 4-hour show. So anybody who's interested in the results, feel free to go to their website where I believe they do explain all the choices. But remember, there is a random number generator involved, so some of this is simply chance, like life. All right. Then we had lungfish versus the tent-making bat. I took the bat, you took the lungfish.
I don't think we gave a shit about either of these, but go on.
No, but you won. Lungfish beat the bat.
I still don't give a shit, but go on. Yeah.
I sure don't.
These were like two of the least interesting. I think yeah.
No. Whatever the case is, you won. The Goanna versus the Rufus Hornero. We both picked the Hornero, and we both lost.
Only because of the name.
Yeah, it's a great name. It is a great name.
The Hornero was beaten by the Viagra, right?
Yeah, it sure was, as is often the case. The Homo habilis and the bee. You picked the Homo habilis, which won. I picked the bee, which lost, so you get that one. So in that case, human did beat bee, even though human's dead, bee's still around. The Montezuma Orapendola against the New Caledonian Crow. Those are two long names. You took
the crow.
I took Montezuma. You took the crow. The crow wins. That one's yours. Good work. And then it was the cathedral termite versus the dung beetle. And unsurprisingly to me, the dung beetle ate shit and the termite won. So now, let's see. Now we come down to our semifinal. So between eagle and pufferfish, what is your choice?
Eagle and pufferfish?
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the eagle.
Yeah, I did too. I just didn't say it, but I was typing it in the background because I kind of, even I have to admit that thing's going to go down to talons. Talons don't get punctured, so if it hits it with the claws, it's done. Then it's the paleocaster versus the lungfish. I know what I'm going with. Paleo.
And those are both your wins, aren't they?
No, you picked lungfish. You won that.
Then I'll stick with the lungfish. Why not?
Right, so you're going with the lung. Okay. All right, and then it is the goanna versus the Homo habilis, which I think in both cases was your... Did you, the goanna? Oh, no, we both lost on that one. We both went with Hornero. So it's goanna versus Homo habilis.
I'll go with the Homo habilis. That one was
All right, I'm going to go with the guano.
Even though I think it's ridiculous that the Homo habilis is even in here.
I tend to agree. That's why I'm going with the goanna. Then we've got the crow versus the termite. I'm going with the crow.
Oh, the crow. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, so crow. All right, let's see. Because those winners should be here as well. Let me move this slightly over. All right. So, unsurprisingly, eagle won. We both picked that. My man, the paleocaster, won, so I get that one. You picked your one. Yours won for that one, so Homo habilis won. And then we both lost on the termite.
Oh.
So this was a split. That was a complete split.
The termite versus who?
The termite versus the Homo habilis.
No, I picked the Homo habilis.
Oh, I'm sorry. Versus crow. Crow versus termite. The crow lost. We both picked crow.
So the termite?
The termite won.
Are you
the
fucking
humble termite.
Shitting me?
Hey, it happens. It happens. I'm just saying. This is what makes it fun. The upsets. That's what everybody likes. Come on.
I know, but it's one thing when you have two teams where you're like, okay, this is both two groups of people, right? But when you've got a termite and a crow, that fight lasts like 2 seconds.
Do you know that the crow doesn't experience debilitating paralysis at the sight of a cathedral termite? Do you know that? If you don't,
yes.
We don't know. You don't know
I bet
that.
you they eat, because they eat bugs.
Sure, they eat bugs, but everything's got a phobia. Maybe the cathedral termite makes the sign of the cross and the crow is very religious. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Now, crows are too smart for that. They're not religious.
I don't know if they're that smart. Obviously, something happened. Cathedral termite won. So now we come down to the final four pick. So for that, we have, what did I say? Here we go. So it would be eagle, or sorry. I already did eagle? Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Eagle versus paleocaster. The crow lost to the termite. So, all right, here's the two. So between eagle and paleocaster, which are you picking? I'm sticking with paleocaster.
Oh, eagle.
Great name. All right, you're going with the eagle.
The eagle.
The eagle, and then the other pairing would be, hold on. Okay. The other pairing would be Homo habilis versus the termite.
Well, I'm sticking with Homo habilis. Fuck the termite.
I think I'm going to go for the upset now with the Homo habilis myself.
It's not an upset. The termite's this tiny motherfucker, and Homo habilis is human size.
The habilis is dead. So I call that an upset.
It is dead. It shouldn't be there.
You're right. Oh, and then we already did our final four picks for the other ones. So did they get to that next round? Let me look. Did they already do it for both? Screw it. Let's just go to the next set. Might as well.
It's April.
Yeah, because it's just only going to be one more, so we'll keep that. We'll keep the so the final four. Let's see. Did they go to the final four? Wait, did we go back to the top? Oh no, they haven't. They have. Oh, okay. I got it. Sorry, this is my fault. We picked it correctly for that. We picked it correctly for. All right, so we had picked. I didn't see that they had completed. So where we picked the mouse and the dick, that set is done. So we both picked mouse to go up against Mara. We both lost. So the Mara won that one. So we both now. And the next one, it was Dick versus Hyrax. You win that one with the Hyrax. Hyrax defeated the Dick. So now, this is the one they haven't done yet. What is your pick between Mara and Hyrax?
I'll take the Hyrax because otherwise I'm undecided.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with you on that one. I think I'll pick the Hyrax. It's got a cooler name. It's kind of where I'm settling now is names. All right, so then animal engineers. Okay, so this will be an interesting one. So we picked, okay, Paleocaster. All right, so Paleocaster and Eagle was, you picked Eagle, I picked Paleocaster. You win, Eagle. So I'll give you that one. And then Homo habilis. Wow, yeah, you got Homo habilis correct too. So now it's, this for you, this is going to be tough. Maybe not. Now it's Homo habilis versus Eagle. What is your choice there?
Honestly, that is tough because without weaponry, a human versus an eagle.
Yeah. I'm picking Eagle. I'll just tell you. I'm going with Eagle.
I gotta think about that one. Hold on.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm looking up the size of an eagle.
Well, they can get big. I mean, they're not going to get bigger than a person, but they can be big. I mean, they have big wingspans. I'll tell you what. I was pretty sure there was one outside a couple of weeks ago.
I'm gonna stick with the Homo habilis because
all right.
I think that an eagle could really beat up a human.
Okay.
But I think that once you were able to grab it and whip it at a tree, that would be the end of the fight.
Yeah. Okay.
It's hollow bones, man. Hollow bones.
Sure. Okay, so then that brings us down to Dad Bods, the worst name. And in that one, we had already picked the what do you call it? The precursor to the final two, which was the Penguin versus Lumpsucker. You took Lumpsucker, I took Penguin. I win. Oh no, sorry, you won that one. Penguin did defeat the Lumpsucker. And then Ray versus Wolverine. Yeah, you won both. You swept that one. That one was all yours. So now it is.
Wait, was the Wolverine beat the Ray?
Beat the Ray. Yeah. Yeah. So you actually got me on both of those. That's the first clean sweep one I think that we've had where both where you got the one person won the whole thing for that part. So now it is Penguin versus Wolverine.
I can't imagine that the Penguin would beat the Wolverine.
I'm going to go with Wolverine as well.
I mean, listen, it may be some kind of numerical upset, but really, if you put a Wolverine and a Penguin in a room,
no, I agree.
Unless the Wolverine dies of a heart attack.
Oh, could happen. Yeah, there's always that. There's a possibility. All right, so I'm going to go with Wolverine as well. So that's it. That's what they're up to. So they have not gotten further than that. So at this point, we are up to whatever the winners of those are will comprise the, not final four, the final 8, I should say. Because there's 2 on each side. Yes, 2 on each side. They have not done the one for Comeback City yet. That one... So they did it for Mighty Stripes and Dad Bods are up to the second to last, and the other ones are 2 backs. Okay, so we still have a little ways to go. So that's good. So I will save this. And that is the current status of our March Mammal Madness picks. Yeah. That was my opener, so if you have something after that, go for it. I'm assuming you do.
Yes, I do. I actually have a few things. Okay. Kind of silly things.
It's sillier than March Mammal Madness, you say?
Oh, I might, yes. So I just want to bring this to the attention of our listeners because I found it hilarious. Have you ever heard of a band called Wind Rose?
I believe I've heard the name. I've never heard them.
They are referred to as dwarven metal.
Yeah.
They are
okay.
And they are an Italian band, right? Who has basically does like heavy metal music, but they do it and with very strong Lord of the Rings dwarven tones, right? And they do hilarious music videos. Like, these are guys who watched Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and thought to themselves, this needs more metal. It is hilarious. I'm not even a huge fan of, like, really heavy metal, but their music... I listened to a little bit, and it just kind of won me over with its kind of like earnest love of of dwarves and fantasy. They even have a song about Minecraft called "Diggy Diggy Hole." one of the things I love about it is, you know how the Italians always have an interesting way of translating English? Because they sing in English, right?
Oh, yes, I do.
Right. So the lyrics sometimes are a lot of fun. Because, you're obviously, it's someone who's obviously kind of, English is not their first language. You know what I mean? So, like, you're getting some really interesting lyric combinations. But I just wanted to bring this band to people's attention because it is ridiculous and fun. Like, I thought it was gonna be really, really dumb and just laugh it off, but then, like, I started listening to, like, some of their songs, and, like, they just grew on me. You know, it's that, like, Gwar. Gwar is not a good band, right? But there is something, like, Gwar grows on you. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you like that kind of ridiculous thing at all, Gwar.
Well, it's the show, not the music.
Yeah. Whereas with this, it's the theme that grows on you. It's the fact that the music sounds halfway between, like, dwarven sea shanties and death metal.
This is Dred Zeppelin. That's what this is.
Oh, is it? Was it?
You know what Dred Zeppelin is?
Isn't Dred Zeppelin a cover band?
Well, yeah, it's a Led Zeppelin cover band that the band is a reggae band and the lead singer is an Elvis impersonator. It's not about the music.
Okay.
It's about the concept is what I'm getting at. You don't listen to it because it's a better version of Led Zeppelin. You listen to it because it's Elvis and a reggae band covering their stuff. It's fantastic.
I had so much fun. I played it for my kids, and my kids thought it was hilarious. And I was playing it in the car, and my wife was like, "Really, really?" And I'm like, "Yep, 100%."
Yes, really.
I find it very fun. And the thing is, like, these days, there's so much grim shit on, like, the news and stuff like that. And to have something like this kind of, like, wash up on the shore and to be like, you know what? I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. Like, the music videos are so silly. Like, they obviously had some kind of, like, shoestring budget, but they wanted to go, like, hard fantasy. So they got, like, bad orc masks and, like, hilarious kind of, like, foam weapons and armor, and they really tried, you know what I mean? But it just seemed like a lot of fun. So if you're looking, if the concept of, like, fantasy dwarven metal music appeals to you, you should definitely look these people up. Yes, I thought it was very funny.
What is their? Is that their only name or is that their English name?
That's the name I found them on iTunes with, okay. Which is Wind Rose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering.
And they will be touring the U.S. too. They're touring Canada and the U.S. in October. So, if you want to catch them,
Italian power metal band.
Yeah,
and they're from Tuscany. Excellent.
The funny thing is, their last 3 albums are very, like, metal, but then their first 2 albums are very power ballad. It was actually quite amusing. I was going through them and, like, with so recently I bought Guns N' Roses Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I owned them years ago, and I thought I still owned them. You know when you have there's, like, old albums you think you own and then you lose them?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'd lost those at some point. So I went and I was looking through which ones I wanted to buy. And I didn't want. I actually find that I like Use Your Illusion 2 far more than I like Use Your Illusion 1.
Lose Your Illusion 1. Great album.
But November Rain is on Use Your Illusion 1, as well as Don't Cry, which are 2 of my favorite Guns N' Roses songs. So, but in this day and age, you can just pick and choose the songs you want, a la carte. And November Rain is one of those songs by Guns N' Roses where, like, 75% of it is, like, metal power ballad, and then the last 75% or last 25% really rocks out, right?
Sure.
So the first 2 albums of Wind Rose are more like the beginning of November Rain, and then the next 3 albums are more like the end of November Rain, where it's more like,
I got you.
So so it's not April anymore, right? But no, April Fool's happen.
Well,
it's not March anymore.
It's still April.
It's April
yes,
now, yeah.
It's not April anymore. April lasts more than a week.
But recently, it was April Fool's Day. And I'm very, very sick of companies doing all
I'm pretty sure the show title is It's Not April Anymore.
I know.
Go on. I don't know if I can resist
of doing, like, all this like really stupid April Fool's shit. You know, they're like, hey, like it was an Element case, which does like phone cases. They're like, hey, we're doing phone cases dipped in chocolate. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, but I actually really got taken by one of these because I didn't see it till April 2nd. And I think that's what fucked me up is that I think there's a rule that all this stupid content should be taken down um, after April Fools because like then
Oh
you
yeah,
read it.
no, I a lot of them, the smart ones have it expire
Yeah.
at midnight. The links just go away.
So the thing that really got me was the Smithsonian Zoo posted something where they had birthed was armadillos with that they had crossed with it's a type of dinosaur that was basically like the relative of the armadillo, which is like the giant armadillo. It's like the what was it called? It's the either way, it's like the giant one. It's like it's like the size of a bear, right? And the thing is, I had completely forgotten that it was April. That this art, I didn't look at the date on the article, so I'm reading the article, and the thing is, it didn't read completely outlandish to me that these people had gotten the DNA for this animal, and they mentioned the whole thing about bringing back how they want to bring back woolly mammoths and stuff like that, and that they had gotten some DNA, and that they had crossed it with basically modern armadillo. I mean, the article was not. It did not strike me as being immediately like, haha, we're being so silly. And then when I got to the end of the article, somebody, the one of the scientists in the article said, we've been questioned about what happens when we introduce a species like this back into the wild that doesn't have any natural predators. And then they said something along the lines of, well, when these things walk the earth, their natural predator were these very large bears that are relatives of like the Chinese bear or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And they were like, we can always try to find DNA for those and introduce those back into the environment if these armadillos become a problem. Now, here's the thing. None of that seems outlandish to me for a scientist to say. Like, because it's very Jurassic Park, isn't it? It's the whole, hey, we found DNA for this prehistoric armadillo, and then we figured out that we could, stick it with armadillos, and we can make these giant armadillos. And like, isn't that cool? And then someone says, yeah, but what happens when you can't control the population? And they're like, oh, we'll just build a predator for it, right? None of that seems that outlandish, which is why I miss the fact that it was an utter April Fool's joke. Because I read it on April 2nd, and it seemed too plausible to be funny. It seemed, in fact, it seemed more like, when you read one of those articles, or like a scientific article, and you go, you did what? And they're like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. Where they're like, they're mining, the tundra in Siberia looking for ancient diseases, and you're kind of sitting there going, why are you looking for them? Like, I was totally taken. I felt like such an asshole afterwards because I had just been bitching about all the stupid April Fool shit, and then this one, like, but to be fair, it got me on April 2nd, and that's why I think they should be. I think they should have to take all that shit down. That happened to me once before too, when I saw something about a company. I saw this like a month after April Fools. Some company, I had found this thing about them making some sort of ridiculous garment, and I was like, why would you make that? I was like, I think it was like a pair of boots that turn into pants that you can like just rip off. They're very stripper. And then I was looking at it. I was just very confused why this company would do this. And then I realized the date it had been posted was April Fool's. And I was like, this is bullshit. That's why. But that's why I don't think they should leave that stuff up. Because especially in this day and age of like weird fake news and people like cruising for something to get offended about. Yeah, it's very easy to like not realize that somebody was like, they were telling a joke. And the April Fool's thing for the Smithsonian Zoo, that was excellent. It was clever. I bought into it. It wasn't, I think the best April Fool's jokes are the ones that like, when you first read them, you're like, wait a minute. Like, not the immediate, hey, we're dipping our phone cases in chocolate. Like, there's the asshole approach, and. So anyway, I had a really good one too for April Fools that I didn't do because I was worried I would kill my mother. Whereas like I'm in the process of moving, and but I'm moving like staying on the East Coast. But I was gonna tell my mom that I found a place in California, and see if and let her sweat about it for the day until I told her that it was an April Fool's joke, and then my conscience kicked in and was like, no, you can't do that. It's like, that's so mean. I was like, she's going to be so upset. So I restrained myself. But, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on the April Fool's thing?
I mean, in general, I just don't bother really taking anything seriously on that day. But fortunately, because it fell on a Saturday, I didn't care. Because
it's honestly, it's because
I didn't look at anything on the weekend. I don't look at a lot of stuff.
It's
like
because
that.
I read it on April 2nd. It just totally went over my head.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that anything like that should expire at midnight. And there's absolutely no reason it can't. I mean, you're not going to get around stuff that scrapes the internet, so something could still report it. But if at least the official outlet didn't have it, I think it would be beneficial or helpful. So, that would be the best case scenario. And honestly, there is no reason that couldn't be set to technically just expire automatically. It's not like it takes a lot of effort. So,
yeah, I just thought it was I just thought it was funny that I was complaining about how,
honestly, the only April Fool's thing I ever thought actually worked well was back when ThinkGeek still existed before it was subsumed by GameStop or somebody, whoever bought them, whatever terrible company bought them. They did a thing where they would have a whole bunch of them, but half of them they actually made. So the thing was trying to figure out which one really got made. They were the best ones.
Because was it 511? The 511 is a tactical company.
Yeah.
They do like tactical clothes. One year they made a tactical kilt as a joke because they were like, "Ha ha ha! It's so silly, men in dresses." And then they got so many demands for them to make it that they actually made it.
Yeah, and I think that's how ThinkGeek's thing started at first too. Was that they were all just jokes, but there was so much interest in them that then they decided to make some of them. They basically. I don't think they made every one, but that was kind of the fun, was you'd look at them and they all seemed equally ridiculous, but you knew some of them would be made. So it was kind of almost a game of, well, what of these will be made? I think that's fun.
Yeah.
Other than that, I'd be fine if all this went away. It's I don't know. It's not that, it's never been that funny. They're outlandish, and I guess, and it's fine if people like them. People obviously some segment of the people must like it, because if everybody hated it, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't.
I don't know if you're right. I think that we as a species are capable of traditionally doing something that we all hate.
Okay,
and
I'm gonna say it like this.
Okay.
Every one of these companies, unless it is literally a brick and mortar store that has no online presence, which would seem kind of pointless. Not to have that, but that they would do an April Fool's thing. I mean, that a lot of that is now driven by the online social media thing. They all will have metrics on whether these things work. If 51% of that came back as, there was no traction for your post, they wouldn't do it. There is no money to be made in something that doesn't reach anybody. That I'm very confident in. Now, that's not to say that smaller, kind of like The Onion and stuff like honestly, if The Onion, I don't know if they do this or not. If I was The Onion, who normally during the year runs parodies,
I would report actual
straight news. Yeah, and maybe they do that. So there are. That's what I'm saying, is there are circumstances where I don't mind it because it's kind of, it can be clever. But in general, people must talk about this stuff in some way, or they wouldn't do it, and they could track it all down.
Well, I guess it's the fact that people talk about it and attracts attention.
Yeah, I think they really don't care. Again, no press is bad press. I don't think they really care if people are like, this is the dumbest thing. But if I say this is the dumbest thing, and I share it to 2 million people, was it the dumbest thing?
Yeah.
Or was it good advertising? You have to ask yourself.
Attention is attention.
Yeah. Because
So.
even if 10% of those people then go to your site and buy something,
Yeah.
who cares how stupid it is? Right?
Yeah, no, you are correct in that respect. I only have one other thing, was that
Sure.
I finished watching Moon Knight. And I wanted to talk about it because I've been thinking about it, the ending of it, and how it was a weird finale for me, or a weird way to end the show. I liked the show, but I don't know if the show quite landed for me. I feel like they gave in to the kind of like the lower Marvel base attitude towards the end. You know, that whole show was doing a lot. I mean, I feel bad that it was labeled a horror show, because like my wife will not watch it, and I kept telling her like it's not.
I didn't
a horror
even know
movie.
it was labeled as a horror
Yeah,
show. It
oh
always just
yeah.
seemed like a superhero show.
When it was first presented, they referred to it as their first horror show.
Interesting.
Right?
I never caught that.
I read that in a few places, and my wife read that in a few places very early on, that they were taking more of a horror approach. Now, really what they meant was that they were trying to take more of like a thriller, right? Because it is more of a thriller in that respect. You don't know what's going on.
I would have
right?
described it as a psychological thriller
Yes.
about somebody who can't tell if he's going crazy or not.
Exactly. Honestly, you know what else is really weird? When I was watching that show, it made me think of my book a few times.
Break World, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So, but yeah, my wife won't watch it. My wife won't watch it. My oldest won't watch it because they're like, yeah, we're not really interested in that because it's like a horror thing. And I'm like, but it's not horror at all. Like, not at all. So I really liked the opener of it. I liked the way they built up. I liked the whole thing with personalities. About halfway through the show, the main guy, Spectre, gets shot, and he kind of goes to the because he is wrapped up with Egyptian gods, he kind of goes to the Egyptian afterlife, and because he's kind of hanging in the middle, in the balance, because he's the avatar of Khonshu, he doesn't immediately go to the other side. Plus, he's got multiple personalities, so it's neat because after like 3 episodes of him of seeing these two personalities at different times and seeing them kind of fight with each other with the reflection, it was really interesting to have the show totally take a left turn from like the run, you know, almost like, you know, a Mummy approach where it was like an action adventure kind of comedy, to suddenly take a left turn into the deep psychological, where the main guy doesn't know if he's in a mental hospital or he's in the afterlife. And essentially you get both versions of Spectre, which is Stephen Grant and Mark Spector, together, like interacting as separate individuals in this psychological sphere. I loved that. That was great. That they totally derailed kind of that normal building narrative, and they go through the backstory for what made Spectre, but what fractured his mind. Which is very sad, which is essentially that he was playing with his brother in a cave, and the cave filled with water because it was raining, and he couldn't save his brother from drowning. And his mother went nuts and basically blamed him for it and was abusive, horribly abusive to him his whole life till he left, right? And this is what broke him. Makes sense. It's interesting. It's not the normal thing that you would get in a Marvel show, you know? It was great. And then there's a whole thing about him trying to get back to the world and trying to free Khonshu, and the fact that Ethan Hawke has now unleashed this god that wants to kill anybody who may ever sin in their life or commit a crime. A lot of interesting stuff going on. But then, in the last episode, it just boils down to a fist fight. Like, after all this interesting mythology and psychology, it comes down to Moon Knight fighting Ethan Hawke, you know, and trying to recapture this god. Was it Anshu? So that she cannot bring, you know,
Khonshu.
No, not Khonshu. Khonshu is his god.
Her. Sorry,
yeah,
I mixed it up. Yes, you're right.
It's the crocodile god whose name I can't remember now.
I'll find out.
But either way, yeah. So it's imprisoning her, and then stopping them. And it becomes very, after all the other
Amit.
weird... Amit, there you go.
Amit.
After all the other weird shit that they've done and all the fascinating... I think they basically got me to a point where I was expecting something more interesting. And it was fascinating that Spectre's wife makes a deal with another Egyptian god and becomes her avatar so that she can help Moon Knight. It's interesting that when Moon Knight is basically put back in his body, his two personalities are now at peace with each other and can seamlessly come out. There isn't like a fracture anymore. They're both they are working together in the body. So it's interesting because you've got this Gestalt personality where they're no longer running from each other. They're together. And when they're talking to Khonshu in the Moon Knight uniform, as they switch personalities seamlessly, the suit switches back and forth. That's visually very interesting. It's very cool. But then, like I said, it all boils down to like this big fist fight. And I'm like, really? I was like, after all this cool shit, you couldn't come up with something more interesting. And honestly, in a weird way, it made me think of Swamp Thing. Because Swamp Thing and Moon Knight occupy a similar place in my mind, comic book wise, right? Moon Knight dealt with a lot of the weird shit in the Marvel universe. It wasn't quite like it wasn't as bad as Blade, where he was dealing with Dracula, but he dealt with a lot of the more occult stuff, right? And Swamp Thing is another fractured character. He's not human anymore. He doesn't know if he's really, what was his name before he became Swamp Thing?
Oh, Ted Sallis.
Swamp Thing?
Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. I'm Man-Thing. That's Man-Thing. Swamp Thing was Alec Guinness. Sorry.
Yep. Alec Guinness? Are you sure? Hold on.
It's Alex something. No, maybe it's not Guinness. Hold on. You're right, because that's the actor. What is that? It's Alex something. What is it?
It's Alex Holland. Alex Holland.
Okay, Holland. Sorry,
yeah, I was like...
Guinness.
You went through the Rolodex. You went through the Rolodex of famous Alex.
No, I knew it was Alec. I couldn't remember. I mixed the last name. No, it is Alec Guinness. What are you talking about?
So there's this psychological thing where he's not sure if he's even human anymore, and he also deals with the occult, right? So but what's interesting about Swamp Thing is that, especially when Moore was writing him, he always found an interesting way for these big situations to end. It wasn't always just some kind of big fist fight. Sometimes it was like there was a physical confrontation as well as like a psychological confrontation, as well as sometimes a spiritual confrontation, or a character coming to a realization that they weren't going to get what they wanted. Like there was so much more.
Sometimes he had to blow up a bridge. Oh, sorry, that's Alec Guinness again. Never mind.
Whereas with Moon Knight, the show, I was really hoping for something more. And right when they got to the end, and they were doing a great job, it just felt like a cop-out. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, and then the show ends. And the show has like a weird kind of abrupt ending, which is essentially they stop the guy. You never find out if he makes amends with his wife or if she likes the fact that she now has both her husband's personalities like functioning seamlessly with each other, because the only thing you see of them is that they're back in bed. The beginning of the show starts with Stephen Grant in bed, and he has sand all around his mattress to make sure that he doesn't, like, if he leaves or tries to leave, he can see the footprints, and then he's like basically chained to the bedpost, right? So he can't sleepwalk as he thought. That's how the show starts. But the show ends that way, which is very confusing, because if the two of them are on the same side,
if they're integrated, why
then why the necessity, unless they suspect something? But they don't seem to suspect anything, even though and plus they think that they've been freed from Khonshu at the end, right? So it's a very weird ending.
Well,
because they have.
I can think of
What?
one reason why they may be doing it still.
Oh, I know why they're doing it. Well, I don't.
Okay.
I know why the show is doing it. I don't know why the characters. Would
No,
be doing
I could, because don't they remember the third one that they are afraid of?
They don't know there's a third one.
Well, but they saw the thing, and one of them said,
No,
"Don't ask about it," right?
No. That's the thing. They don't know.
Well, then who said, "Never mind that"?
I think it was Khonshu that said that. Yeah,
To
there's
who?
a third. There was a third tomb.
Yeah, who did Khonshu
Right?
say it to? Was it Mark?
No, so I'm trying to think, but one of them says, "Should we open that?" And the other guy says, "I don't want to know." And it's never implied that they know it's a personality.
Okay, they
You know what I
may
mean?
not know that, but it's reasonable. Well, I don't know.
It's
reasonable
never
might be the wrong
if
word.
you go by the context of the show, right? The characters never communicate an idea that they think there's any more personalities.
Okay,
They
well, see,
think-
that to me is a fallacy right there. Because if there's
Yeah.
more than one, why would you not think it's possible
They
there's more
think-
than two?
They think it's just the two of them, right? Now here's the thing: the show lets the audience know that there may be a third person early on, like around like episode 2 or 3, right? But they don't seem to know. And then they never mention it. Like, it's never something that they discuss. It's never something that they communicate. So it's weird at the end of the show that they're back in the bed and they're chained to the bedpost. And it's annoying because they make a huge deal about the relationship between Spectre and Grant and the wife, right? Because she likes them both in different ways, right? But then there's never it never comes to a climax. Like you never find out if they make amends. You never find out if they get divorced, right? And then the stinger ending that they put in the credits is that you find out there's a third personality, and the third personality is still working for Khonshu. So a part of Mark Spector is still Moon Knight, right? And that's fine. But like I said, I like the show like 90% of the way, and then this last 10% at the end, they it's either the fact that someone said to them, you got to do something more conventional, or the writers ran out of ideas and said, let's just turn this into a beatdown. And that's what it is. It's like after all this weird mythology and spirituality and like I said, this weird, psychology, it comes down to like a fist fight in the streets. And like maybe if they'd made a statement about that, where like if a character had made some kind of commentary about it's disgusting that it boils down to this or something like that, but literally nobody says anything. Khonshu and the crocodile god are fighting in the background like Godzilla, even though no one can see them, because they become giants the size of the pyramid, so they're like fighting in the background while Spectre is fighting Ethan Hawke in the foreground. And I was watching it and I was like, I expected, based on the previous 90%, I expected more. And it's not, and the thing is, like, there's plenty of fistfights and murder earlier on in the show, right? It's just the fact that at this point, where we're dealing with such powerful characters, where Ethan Hawke he's the avatar of this other character, and he's become very powerful, and he has a magic staff. And Moon Knight has integrated his personalities, and you've got this whole other avatar character. I thought that it would become more than just another beatdown. You know what I mean? It's like getting, it's gonna a horrible video game reference, but it's like getting to the end boss of the whole game, and having them just be like another, I don't know, just another bad guy. You know what I mean? Actually, didn't we have that? Isn't there some game we played where we got to the end guy?
That's what I was struggling to think of. Where it was
And
like
we
that.
were
Was
like-
it, was
yeah.
it wasn't it Outriders where we were like, this is it?
Yeah,
This is the
yeah.
end?
It was. You know what? It was kind of like that, where you're like, you get to the end, and you're like, really? That was it? Just to beat him up?
Well, it's okay. So it's a game where you start out and all you're doing is shooting something with a gun, and then in the second stage they give you the ability to cast a spell, and the enemy at that one requires you to use the gun and the spell, and then in the third stage they give you some kind of jumping ability that you combine with the spell and the gun, and then when you get to the end of the game, you just have to shoot him in the face.
Yeah.
I think one of the Far Cries was actually like that. Once you got to the very end, you just went up to him and shot him.
Yeah,
Maybe
so
that's what we're thinking of. But yeah, I think it was one of
maybe,
those where
yeah.
the very
So-
end was you did all this fighting, but when you got to the guy, it literally just said, there's some game where it's like, click this to shoot him. And that was
Yeah,
it.
And if the whole idea is that at the end
Actually,
of the day,
wasn't that Far Cry 6 with the Giancarlo Esposito character? Wasn't it all this stuff, and then when we got to him, it just said, like, hit R2 to shoot him, and that was it?
Yeah, I think
That
that
might
was
have
pretty
been it.
Yeah, that might have been. That was pretty anticlimactic. Yeah. I mean, granted, what did we expect? Was he going to get into a giant Cuban mech suit and have
Well,
a beat down with you?
it still came off as a little bit lackluster.
Yes,
You know?
yes. And that's and I guess that's the thing is that because of the caliber of the rest of the show, I was just waiting for more. At least some commentary, because it's like you've got all this shit going on, and unless the idea, but see, the idea breaks down because the whole idea is Moon Knight crazy, right? And the thing is, like, this is why I kept thinking of my book, because when I was writing my book, my whole concept of my book was essentially, is my main character crazy, right? And I very carefully walked the line where I was always trying to make sure that I never tipped the scales, right? Like, for a reader, you can read it either way because it can go either way. I never tipped the scales, and there's people who've read it both ways. Whereas with this, it's like they were really playing the whole "is he crazy" angle, like, is he really in a sanitarium till the very end? And then at the end, it's like, well, you've tipped those scales. His girlfriend has superpowers. Like, she knows he's not. I mean, he has multiple personalities, but like, she understands that it's all fucking real now. She's seen the inside of the magic pyramid. So it's yeah, and then it just becomes this big beatdown, and now, yeah, I just, and then they beat the hell out of Ethan Hawke, and then they trap the crocodile god in his body, and then Khonshu's like, fucking kill him, and he's like, no, I'm not working for you anymore, and instead they somehow put this, and then, like, this is like kind of lazy writing. They somehow put him in a mental hospital, and I'm kind of sitting there going, yeah, but how? How does that work? Because, like, he has a god in him. I mean, I guess that's the loss of specificity where you're like, did he lose his powers? But he does have, like, is he just a meat prison for her now? He doesn't actually have any abilities, and, like, is he heavily medicated? Does heavy medication,
Yeah, it's playing fast and loose with the details.
Yeah, like, does it outdo the power of the gods? You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you suddenly were like the avatar of Zeus, right? Does a needle full of thorium? Was it thorium? What is it? Of some kind
lithium.
Some kind of medication. Is that gonna take you out of the game? Like, wouldn't you think the power of Zeus be like, no, he's got the power of a god in him. Your petty medications aren't going to do shit.
They're not going to get into this, but that is always an interesting question to me, is if it's a god inhabiting a mortal, is the god enshackled to the mortality elements? Meaning, if I just punch you hard enough and you get knocked out, is the god knocked out? Or can the god overpower the mortal? I mean, you could play it any way you want, but the fact that they didn't define it is your problem. They didn't really explain, okay, this god is still bound to the physical reality of the person, meaning if you overpower his nervous system, the god's knocked out.
Yes, and that's the question, right?
Like, well, yes, and that's I think what your real problem is the rules were not explained. And you're big on rules.
Yeah, and the thing is, early on they're big on rules, right? Where Khonshu breaks the rules, so they imprison Khonshu because he broke the rules, and you can't.
Okay, well, here's the question: so is Khonshu through Mark Spector? Does he appear to not care about the mortal bindings of Mark Spector?
Oh, yeah, it's a good question.
Because that would establish
yes, because he can bring him back from he can keep him from being harmed. Because
so if somebody shoots at him, he can stop the bullet.
Yes, but as soon as he gets put back in his body, he is the ward of Khonshu, so the bullets fall out of the wounds and he's alive again.
So it is impossible to kill him while Khonshu's in him.
Yes. Or while he's working for Khonshu, it seems.
Has at any point in the show after Khonshu was in him, was he knocked out?
I don't think so.
Not killed, but knocked out.
No, when he gets shot, Khonshu's already been imprisoned. So he's lost Khonshu's power when he gets shot.
That's where it's important is, okay, when other characters, because repelling the wounds, because here's a good example, as bonkers as this is going to sound, but it is the rules of this particular universe, right?
Yeah.
Now they've changed it a bunch, so maybe this is no longer the case. But at one point, Green Lantern, when Green Lantern was Superman.
Oh, is this the yellow
we'll go to
thing?
Superman. Superman's easy. Now forget the yellow thing because that's shifted
right.
a bunch of time. Superman. The reason that his clothing never gets shredded, but his cape does, is because he has a micromillimeter force field that he emits around his body. Oh, you've never heard this? You didn't know this? I'm not making this up. That's real.
No. I know you're not making this up.
Yeah.
I know that somebody made this up at some point because someone was like,
well, somebody said, "How does he not have his clothes get shredded?"
Why is the Hulk always wearing green pants?
Yeah, well, unstable molecules.
Yeah, purple pants.
Unstable molecules. That's the answer.
Yeah.
In any event, so yes, but yes,
it's always
right. So the thing is, so that is also his invulnerability. That's why bullets bounce off Superman. He has a field that is invulnerable to everything except magic. Except, if you remember, Superman's been knocked out a bunch of times. Doomsday knocked his ass flat because he hit him hard enough.
Well, and that's the thing is if you hit, but it's the thing. If you're wearing an armored suit, right, and somebody hits that armored suit hard enough, the inside is going to rattle around.
Well, and that's what I'm getting at as far as just because he can't be killed with Khonshu doesn't mean that he can't be incapacitated. That's it. And if he... Again, I don't know the show ever. Maybe the show just doesn't care to explain it, and that's what I really think we're talking about here. Is that the show did not care to explain the rules fully. So I agree that your problem with what's going on feels like they're just saying most people aren't going to question it. Let's just race through this.
Most people aren't going to give a shit, so it's fine.
But that is one thing I've always liked about these types of stories: is there a boundary between the god and the mortal? I always like that idea.
You like the rules, so do I.
Well, I like the idea of where they fall on it because I think you can play it either way, and that's interesting. But like you said, if there's no rules established, then you have to sit there and go, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense because nobody's bothered to say, well, this is why.
And like I said, I enjoyed most of the show, but I feel like the ending was a bit. Maybe sloppy. It was a bit rushed.
It was a sloppy.
You know, I mean, like it's gonna sound weird, but. And this is a good thing. I almost felt like they needed another episode. They needed other episodes, and they need to slow down this conclusion, and do more with it. Just don't. And if you're gonna make it just a fist fight at the end of this all, then make it a fist fight make it a statement. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like say no. At the end of the day, it all boils down to mortal rules, and it's a fucking fist fight, right? Make a statement out of it. But they didn't. So it was just weird because, like I said, at some point you'll watch it. And when you watch it, maybe you'll get the same feeling where you feel like 90% of it is going in a direction, and then you feel like it kind of turns down right at the end. And it's not that they didn't land it per se. Like everything happens like it's nothing's illogical per se.
It's not bad. It's just not as good as you would like it to have been in the final.
Yeah, it didn't maintain its upward trajectory.
It wobbled a little bit when it hit the mat.
Yes. Yeah. It's a nice gymnastics term. Yes.
See, well, my background as a gymnast with my incredible physique lends itself to me making these analogies.
A mental gymnast, right?
Yeah, that's about it.
Man, I saw a gym for video game playing the other day.
Gym for video game play?
I drove by it and I was like, hey, it's a new gym. And then I read the full name and it was a gym for like basically video game. So like
a treadmill with a screen on it so you can
play? No, it's a video game. It's a competitive video game gym where they train you to play video games competitively.
Like an esports type of thing.
Yes.
All right.
And I was like, whoa. Could you imagine if you went back and told yourself when you were like 12 that one day there was going to be a gym for competitive video games?
12, I would have been stupid enough to believe it. 16, no. When you're 12, if somebody says one day there's going to be a video game gym, you'd be like, yeah, damn right there is. I'll play in it.
Yes, I thought it was hilarious. I saw that because I was like, who's paying for that? Who's sitting at home going,
oh, somebody. No, don't. Yeah, no, because it's like every other thing where they tell, it's every other thing where the 1% of people can make, it's like when the trainers for anything where they tell you could go pro. Well, no, you're probably not, but you could pay, somebody will pay you could pay them to train you to do it. Sure. I guarantee you that there are baseball but
the thing is, I'm trying to figure out, because are you getting do you have to be young? Is this kids convincing their parents, or is this guys in their 20s going, yeah, I could be fucking professional?
Oh, either one, because you can enter tournaments without any training at all. And let's say you entered a local one, you won, and somebody said, oh, you could go pro. Well, if you don't know the reality of, look. When I started college, my concept was at the end I would come out of it and be drawing comic books inside of 3 months. At which point reality punched me in the
Wow.
When I started.
Okay.
Yes. Then by the end I realized that the only way that was going to happen is if I was in a cardboard box on the side of the street drawing comics on the inside of the box. So there is what you believe because of whatever. If you grow up and you have parents that have money and you spend all day playing video games and you're decently good at it, you might believe that you could play pro. The same way that if you're let's say you're in a small town with a small high school and you're the best basketball player in that thing, that's because you don't have a national concept.
Yeah.
So you might think, oh yeah, I can apply to a college and they'll take me on a scholarship and I'll play pro ball because
I'm amazing, yeah.
Because the pool of people you were playing against may not have been that skilled.
Big fish in a small pool, yeah.
Right, yeah. It's actually same thing for me. The high school that I went to, I was one of only 3 people who could really draw. In that high school, I was in the top 3% or whatever percent of artists. Then I went to college and almost everybody around me was 80 times better. At multiple different things.
Hey, dude, I was probably the best. I was probably the best fiction writer in my high school.
Sure. So if somebody had told you,
I was published at the high school level.
So okay, imagine coming out of high school or even at the beginning of college.
But you know me, and you know my personality. What didn't you guys come up with a term for me? Somebody for. I don't know, for playing things down or something like that.
Oh yeah, I don't remember what it was, but I did.
You and what's his name?
Doug? Was it me and Doug?
No. Yeah, the guy from the other podcast that we played.
Rojan. Yeah,
you and Rojan.
Yeah,
you and Rojan had a term for me, playing things down or something. Yeah,
I gotta ask him. He'd remember.
Yeah,
I don't.
He said it was like pulling a Lando or something like that. So that's the thing. No. Growing up, I had hope, but I was also a realist. I mean,
but most people aren't that. I'm saying a lot of people are optimistic. And
Lando, most people are not damaged like you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So imagine that you were a less realistic version of yourself, and you saw a thing that said, we can make you into a professional writer. Take these classes, and a year from now, you will be published.
I did. I went to college.
Okay, well then, see, you fell for it.
But I knew it was bullshit.
Well, that's the difference between you and a lot of people and the reality is there probably are going to be 1 or 2% of those people who might be able to compete. So it's not necessarily a lie.
I'll be honest with you. I was so curious to go in and just see
Well, there are people who make big money in esports. It is a lucrative thing. So honestly, it is a pretty even field. If your reflexes are good enough, you can be as good as anybody else.
What kind of age do we live in? Isn't it fascinating that that is something out of a Gibson novel?
Oh yeah. Well, it's Ender's Game. It's that type of thing. Same idea.
It's like the other day I think I was texting you about I don't think, did we talk about this on the show? The company that makes people disappear in Japan.
Yes, we did.
Are we talking about on the show? Or talking about playing video games?
I thought we did mention it. I don't remember.
Either way, yeah. The companies in Japan that evaporate people.
Yeah, the evaporators.
And then the people. Oh no, they're called the Night Movers. That's the name of the company, which is the coolest fucking name. The Night Movers.
I think I said the evaporators. I think it was.
Evaporators. The people that they move are called the evaporated.
Yeah, that's it.
But it's like there's such neat concepts, and that feels so Gibson. That feels like it's waiting to be some kind of cyberpunk novel, if it isn't already. It was just funny that I saw that in a corner of Vermont. And the thing is, if I saw that in a corner of Vermont, then there must be like 50 of them in New York City.
Oh, I'm sure in bigger cities, yeah, they're around. Oh yeah,
but it's that kind of that wide penetration where it's like, oh, it's here. Well, shit, then it's everywhere.
Correct. Yeah.
So yes. So I will be curious how you feel watching Moon Knight. But honestly, I would watch it with your wife. I think she'd really enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think she wants to, so we probably will.
Yeah. I mean, and Willow actually went off really well with you too, so.
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas, I cannot get my wife to watch it.
Yeah.
But I noticed that my wife is, as we get older, my wife has got less patience for sci-fi because she's like me in that she can see the structure of narrative, right? Unlike me, she doesn't give them leeway based on like the whole, if the overall story is good, then I will let some things go. Like overall, Moon Knight was very good. So like, I'm not going to let the kind of downturn ending totally ruin it for me because I liked 90% of it, whereas she'll be sitting there going plot holes. But it's also funny that my wife is the type of person that when she's watching something she likes, suddenly she becomes a little blind to all the potholes.
Well, that happens. Sure.
Because it's the whole
human nature.
Yeah, it's human nature. So it's very funny in that respect. But she's not going to watch Moon Knight. She's going to watch it and be like, and she's going to want the rules. And I get that because I want the rules. But they're not writing for me. And I accept that. They're not writing these shows for me. They're writing them for you. They're not expecting people to pay close attention most of the time.
I would agree with that.
And when you do, you see the holes. And it doesn't pay to be meticulous. You just get irritated with yourself at the end because you're like, why would they? I mean, you do this too, where you're like, why would they do that? And you're like, well, they didn't do it because they didn't think anyone was going to notice. That's why.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I have to bring to the table.
I have a movie review.
Ooh.
And this one is just a legitimately good to great movie. Depending on,
I'm always waiting for you to be like, and this is a legitimate crappy movie.
No. This is I came across this reading about a different movie, which I will also be watching but haven't watched yet.
So, what is this movie called?
It's called Hangar 18. It's from 1980. Now, it's described as a science fiction action film. There is very little action in this, so I will set expectations properly.
Is that what's his name?
What's his name?
Hold on.
You got to be more specific than that. There's a couple of big names in this thing.
Was it Darren
the Night
McGavin?
Night Stalker. I was going to say the Night Stalker is one of the leads.
Yeah,
the Night Stalker and the bad guy from Superman 3. That's the people I know. That's what I know. So, which is Robert Vaughn. So, this movie I came up as one of these. It's because there's a period of time, which is basically the 70s, where conspiracy movies started getting really big. Parallax View, stuff like that, which were mostly centered around like Watergate and that type of thing. And this started the shift towards UFO stuff. And I'm always kind of interested in movies like this, because conspiracy movies used to be fun before the world became enraptured in actually believing them. So I kind of like going back to these ones where I'm like, the gentle nature of old conspiracy films where everybody was like, yeah, but that wouldn't really happen. As opposed to now where they're like, of course it happened in a pizza parlor and we all believe it and wow, we're going to go kill other people over it, But I also liked it because it was older and I went, okay, this is, I knew some of the people in it. I like Darren McGavin a lot. Robert Vaughn I know is reliable. So I'm like, okay, let me watch this thing. I'm just curious. I didn't pick this ahead of the other one for a particular reason. I just decided to watch it. So it starts out and there's a space shuttle mission. And the space shuttle mission is up in orbit and they're deploying a satellite for the government, for the military. Now, they sort of make a big deal about that at first, that this satellite has to be launched. But they kind of dropped that thread. I think it was just there for plot convenience that they couldn't abort the mission when they detect on the radar that there's some kind of weird object up there. And the military guy says, no, it can't be delayed. This thing has to launch. And then they run into a little problem with the satellite. The actual armature is kind of getting stuck. So one of the astronauts, because there's 3 of them, one of them says, all right, I'll go into the shuttle bay or the launch bay and I'll winch it manually or whatever. I'll fix the problem. So he goes out. And when he goes out there, that's when the other 2 and then mission control. Aaron McGavin is running mission control. And then there's the 3 astronauts. And one of them goes out, and the other 2 on their radar start to see this thing flying around. But they can't spot it at first. It's being picked up. And mission control is picking it up as well. At which point you see the general who's in the room immediately say, call NORAD. Find out what this is. So I'm like, okay, I kind of think I know where this is going. And so they don't see it until they're about to launch the satellite. And they've already initiated the process for the satellite to launch. So the rocket on it fires, and it starts to go, and then they see the ship sitting there, and the satellite hits into the ship and explodes, right? And there's a big explosion. Doesn't damage the shuttle, but there's a big explosion.
So the satellite hits the UFO.
Hits the UFO, the UFO, and blows up. At which point the UFO then comes into Earth orbit and lands relatively normally. It lands it doesn't really crash. It appears to kind of come down properly. So almost as if somebody is landing it. And so but that's a little bit later. So the explosion happens and, mission control is flipping out. Everybody's flipping out. And up until this point, this movie appeared to be a very almost after school special type of production. And I don't say that necessarily in a derogatory way, but it felt almost felt more like a 50s film in terms of it's got a very kind of classic sweeping orchestral score. Mm-hmm. And the shuttle is a practical effect with obviously like a firework being used as the ignition. You know what I mean? Where the jet coming out of the back is obviously a Roman candle or something that they just stopped from shooting balls out. So they just have the flame jetting. It's literally just a flame jetting out, and it's classic actors, like, older kind of actors who later we would see in character roles and that type of thing. So up until this point, I'm like, okay, this is going to probably be a very straightforward film. Not necessarily bad, but definitely a more classic type of movie, sort of, because there was a point where the experimentation in the 70s, there was kind of a response to that, which was to go back into safer films. So I thought that's where this was heading, because it just felt very kind of almost like something that you would expect as a industrial film about how mission control works, kids.
Well, like mission control, it's very golden age, right?
Yes. It's like when the shuttle is up there, the mission controller will talk to them on the radio like this. Hey guys, how's it going? It's going great, boss. We're about to launch the satellite. Like, it's that type of thing. Up until the point where you see the 2 astronauts in the shuttle look out and see the decapitated body of the 3rd astronaut floating away. And I mean, it was actually a shocking to me thing, because it's so clean, but in comparison to how sterile the rest of the film had been, industrial it had been, to just see a decapitated head rotating away from them in a astronaut helmet, where you can see the eyes are open and like he's screaming. And they realized that a piece of the debris had decapitated him. But after everything else, I went, okay, I don't know what this film's going to do now, because that I expected he had died, but I thought that they were just going to say it. I didn't expect to see the decapitated body floating away. And then they basically just watch him slowly. It's horrible. They just watch this person float off, the 2 people who had worked with him, and he floats off into the nothing. Like, they don't even get his body or anything. It just goes away. So they land the shuttle. And in the process of landing the shuttle, now the general goes to Robert Vaughn, who is the Secretary of Defense, I think. I'm trying to look and see what he's supposed to be. Is he supposed to be? What is he? I don't know what he's supposed to be. I think I'm going to say Secretary of Defense, whatever, because basically he's a higher up who's answering to the president. And so the general goes to him and says, "This craft came down." And, we've got it. We went and recovered it, and, we've got it, and we have to study it. And the Secretary of Defense, Robert Vaughn, says, okay. And then the director of the CIA is also there. And he says, okay, there's an election in 2 weeks. And the president is the best president that we're likely to have in a long time because he's big on defense spending. So we need to make sure that we keep him in office. If something like this comes out, in the last election, one of his opponents had said they believed in UFOs, and he made fun of him. If this now comes out, they're going to destroy the president, which doesn't really make a lot of logical sense if you think about it too far, because it's one thing to say you believe in them. It's another to say, hey, everybody, here it is. But he then says, and plus there might be panic.
Yeah,
and,
but you know what? I think we have to look at this through the lenses of like a 19... Like you said, that it feels more like a 1950s movie, right?
Sure.
Yeah, you kind of have to look at it through that very safe view, with like, this might really hurt the president. We're going to have to bury this.
The fact that he also mentions panic is more. I'm like, okay, it's not so much that they would have a problem with the UFO. What they would do is flip out because they wouldn't know what it means.
Yeah.
And so the general says, well, what are you saying? That we shouldn't study it? We should get rid of it? He's like, no, we have to study it. We have to know what the hell's going on. He's like, we just have to keep this secret for 2 weeks until the election happens. He's like, all we got to do is bottle this thing up for 2 weeks.
That doesn't seem that difficult, though.
You wouldn't think so, would you? But hold on.
Right.
Because then the general says, okay, because Vaughn says, well, who knows about this? And the general says, well, right now it's the people in this room, anybody in mission control, and the astronauts. And he says, okay. Vaughn says, well, we know not everyone in mission control necessarily knows what this is, but we are going to need NASA people to look at this because honestly, they're the subject matter experts. So we can't really keep them in the dark. So he's like,
who else do you give it to?
That's it. So he said, get the head of mission control, which is Darren McGavin, Night Stalker. He says, get Night Stalker and have him put together a small team, and we're going to sequester them in some area. Where do we put them? And the general says, well, the best facility is going to be one that works on spacecraft. So we have a spacecraft hangar that's empty, which is hangar 18. He's like, we'll put it in there, and we'll seal everybody in there, and that's it. And he says, but what about the astronauts? And Vaughn says, what do you mean? And he says, well, I think we should bring them into this right away because they saw it. They're astronauts. I think we should include them. And Vaughn and the CIA guys say no. They say they're not scientists. We're going to keep them out of it. We'll just seal them off. All we got to do is keep them quiet for 2 weeks. We'll just tell them that, something. We'll figure it out. And the CIA guy says, no problem. I'll take care of it. And so the space crew comes back and they're looking for the mission control guy, and he's already gone. And there's some other guy in his place. And he's like, well, where's our guy? Because we trust him. And the guy's like, I don't know. They put me in here to replace him, and he's somewhere else, but I don't know where it is. So they go, okay. And they don't think too much of it right away until they then are talking to one of the other people at the space program who says, have you guys read the paper? And no. And in the paper it says that their human error resulted in the guy dying. So basically the story is that there was human error in the deployment of the satellite, and that's why the third guy died. And the two of them are like, what? We didn't kill him. We saw the spacecraft. We know what we saw. And they're like, oh, this is... And one of them, because there's one that's more serious and there's one who's more jovial. And the jovial one's like, don't worry about it. Look, we'll just go and we'll look at the recording of the space flight and we'll just show it to somebody and we'll fix this. It's just a mistake. It's, because at first...
When they say somebody, do they mean somebody there or do they mean like the public?
Well, at first, what they think, because they at one point talked to the general, and the general says, I don't know who planted this story, but I'll get to the bottom of it. Just bear with us. It might take a while, meaning 2 weeks. So essentially the general tells them that this is an outside kind of scare story. But he's like, we're on it. We'll let you know. And it's just that the astronauts aren't patient enough to wait 2 weeks. Because, of course, the general knows where it came from. It came from their stuff. But the general all the time feels like he's not in agreement with this. Like he doesn't, and he did suggest bringing the astronauts into it, so it makes sense. So the two of them are like, okay, well, we're not going to wait around. Well, and that's where he's like, we just show this to somebody in the press that exonerates us. So they go and they look at the mission recording.
Oh, man. Yeah, okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they look at the recording, and there's no blip. It's been altered. And they look, and they're like, what the hell, man? We saw what we saw. It was on this tape. We're not crazy. And so they're like, and one of them...
the ball just starts rolling.
Yeah. And by the way, the only one of the few nitpicks I have about the movie is one of the guy playing the jovial astronaut, there is no chance this guy's an astronaut. He has a bigger gut than I do. There is no way. And I mean, not that I'm saying, it's...
No, but this is the whole suspension of disbelief
No, I
thing.
know.
No,
but,
it makes total sense. Yeah.
He's not the size of the blob or anything,
but
but he is not in shape.
Hey, listen, this is the whole, you see a movie where the guy's like, I'm a nerd and all I do is play video games all the time. And you're like, dude, you are like 10 years too old to be a high schooler and you've got fucking like a six-pack and you're jacked. It's like, no, you don't just sit on the couch.
All I'm saying is maybe don't put him in the shirts that were as tight as he was wearing because it wouldn't be as obvious. It doesn't matter. And especially because the guy next to him is like a rugged Robert Redford looking guy, like who is in shape. So the two of them together, one looks like the accountant for the other, not a fellow astronaut, is all I'm saying. It's not a big deal. I don't care. It is funny though when you first see it. When you first think about it, it's you chuckle about it. So anyway, like the non-astronaut astronaut says, wait a minute. There's an observation point that sees every mission that we do. Let's go see if they've got it on their tape. Maybe this is a mistake.
Is this all still in the hangar area? Or are they out?
No, they're not in the hangar. The hangar is sealed off. These guys.
They decided not to include them.
Right, because the general said do it, and Vaughn and CIA vetoed it because
what a
mistake.
They said no. Okay.
Yeah, that's the whole mistake, and that's when the general later was like, "You mother." But anyway, we'll get to that. So. They're on the outside, and they're being kept on a complete blackout. That's why the general's like, I'll look into it, because he's hoping that they'll just not worry about it for a couple weeks. But, of course, if you were being blamed for the death of one of the people you worked with forever, you'd probably not take it. So that's the general's mistake, is not to say, sit tight and, feed them fake hourly updates or something. The stupidity is why the CIA guy thought that it was smart to blame them and not just say it was equipment error and say that why not just tell them right now, we think if this story comes out, it's going to panic the public. But this is a distrust by the government conspiracy movie, so this is why these things happen. So they go out to this station.
It just seems so ridiculous that they wouldn't loop the astronauts into this.
Well, it does and it doesn't. I mean, there is an element of... I'm not necessarily saying if this really happened that wouldn't be the case. I think the cover story they chose was the poor decision. You can shut him out, but then don't try to blame him for somebody's death. Or, figure some other way to do it.
So don't pin it on them, It
was not the ideal choice. So they go to this listening station or this watching station, and the guy working there is like, look, man, I've got orders not to let anybody see this stuff, but I know you guys, so I'll show it to you, but I can't make you a copy. And sure enough, the blip is there. And he's like, can you tell us where the blip came down? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, I can project that. So he tells him where it came down. So the two of them then head out to where the ship came down. Now, at this point, the movie starts doing something interesting.
How far into the movie are we at this point?
Probably about the 15, 20 minute mark, maybe, of a 90 minute, or it's about 100
Oh,
minutes.
wow. We're only 20 minutes in.
Yeah. So, because,
okay.
and this is what I was going to start explaining, is now the movie starts to split. So now what you have is two movies. You have a movie about the two of these guys trying to figure out what's going on, and then it intercuts back. It's almost like a documentary. It's almost structured like a documentary film or a recreation because it keeps cutting back and forth with the time and the day and the location, which I actually really like. I think it works well for this movie. So now back in the hangar, they have Night Stalker, and he's assembled his team, which is 2 doctors, a linguist, an engineer. Was there a 5th person, or was it just those 4 and him? I think it might have been just those 4 and him, now that I think about it. So it's 2 doctors, 2 medical doctors, a linguist, and a mechanical engineer. And he is, and I think this is great. He is so enthusiastic about discovering what this thing is. He is like a child. He's like, I cannot wait to get into, and this is fucking Night Stalkers like this. It's just great. He's like, I can't wait to find out what happened here. I've got to know everything. We have to get in here and we have to explore it. I want to know. He has a jovial enthusiasm that normally you wouldn't expect for this type of movie, where he is all gung-ho. Everybody else is a little bit more tempered and serious, but he's like, oh, I want to know. Tell me, what's the answer? Go find out, man. Start poking and prodding. I want to know. And so they have the spacecraft sitting in the hangar, and the first thing is it's a very, in some ways, realistic kind of clinical approach to how they would do things. Because the first thing is they're standing in front of it in these radiation suits, And Night Stalker's like, okay, well, what do we start with? And the one guy walks around and he says, well, how do we get into it? How do we get into the thing? And then it sort of opens itself up due to their proximity, because they kind of step onto it and then it starts moving and then a landing thing comes out. So they go in and they're all still in suits and they start reading the air and they determine the air is okay. So for a while they're in the suits, but they're just looking around. And at first Night Stalker's like, don't touch anything. We don't know what any of this stuff does. And the inside has a lot of different, and then once they're inside, they're trying to figure out, okay, there's a second level, a command level. How do we get to it? Because there's no stairs. So they're looking around and he's like, but be careful, don't touch anything. And then one of the guys, the mechanical engineer, kind of looks down and he sees this little space with what looks like a pedal, and he puts his foot on it and kind of pushes a little bit and it starts to come up. And he's like, oh, it's an elevator. So they all have to get onto it and they're kind of cramped. And then he pushes the lever and the elevator goes up. So there are no stairs. There's like this central elevator that just goes up to the next floor. So they go up to the second floor and now they're on a bridge and they're looking, it's all alien symbols and all this stuff. And so it is the mechanical engineer, the linguist, and Night Stalker are the ones who are in there. And they see these two seats. And as they get close, the two seats spin around. And the aliens, which I didn't know how much the movie was in. I thought the whole movie, the thing was just going to stay sealed. I really didn't know how far in they were going to get because I just wasn't sure. So the thing spins around and the aliens looked to me, when they spun around, they looked like the Harkonnen from Lynch's Dune. I'm not kidding. I don't know if you can find an image of it.
All bubbly faced?
Well, no, they clean skin, but in black leather suits and very pale and bald. Let me see. Hangar 18 aliens. Do they actually have pictures? Because you can see what I'm talking about. I mean, I did not expect them to look the way they did. I thought, yeah, okay, look it up. You'll see one of them.
Very clean.
Very clean, and like with blue contact lenses in. Do you see it?
Hold on one second.
Yeah, just look up Hangar 18 aliens. It's the first image for me that comes up.
They just I see that. Yeah.
Yeah, they look like the Harkonnens. This looks like the first test footage of the Harkonnens for Dune.
Honestly, they look kind of funny. But go on.
But I was so shocked by the fact that they were humans. They were humanoid, and the fact that they just immediately were there. And so he's like, "All right, let's get them out and let's find out: are they alive? Are they dead?
Are they? Yeah, are they dead?
They are dead. We find out they are dead." So then his thing is, well, how did they die? Were they dead? His big hang-up becomes, were they dead before the ship landed or after? Because if they were dead before, how did they land the ship? They never, again, there's little things where I don't mind that they don't explain it, but they don't necessarily get into why he's so on top of, why did it matter if it landed itself or they landed it? But it's like a thing with him. And that's fine, because it sort of is it plays into his, again, enthusiasm to just learn certain things. So they get the bodies out, and then they start looking around, and they start seeing videos of the Earth, but in an alien language, which is actually a really neat, whatever they did for the effect on the voice, is both alien and very unsettling, but not malevolent unsettling, just alien unsettling. I like whatever they did with the voice effect. Is very good. And so they're seeing all these symbols, and then they start seeing all these pictures of like a nuclear power plant and New York City, and I'm trying to remember all the places that they're showing, and like these weird graphics that at first you take to be like targeting coordinates, because that's what they look like. They look like grids and these red circles that kind of zero in. So the first thing you would think is, oh, that's places they're targeting to destroy. And so they're looking at that, and then we're cutting back to the astronauts. So the astronauts get to Arizona, and they find out before they get there, we see this guy who, when the ship had crashed, this guy, just normal guy driving along, saw it, drove his truck over to it, saw that the spacecraft had crashed, goes and gets the sheriff, but by the time they get back, it's gone. The government has taken it. And so the sheriff's like, oh yeah, okay, Sam Tate and his crazy theories. Sure, Sam, there was a spaceship, whatever. And then when the astronauts get there, where they land, the airfield, they ask the guy who's running the airfield, they're like, have you heard anything about a crash? He's like, a crash? He's like, yeah, anything from the sky that dropped or a satellite or a meteor or anything. And he says, no, unless you mean what Sam Tate's going around telling everybody. And they're like, what's he telling her? He's like, oh, he says he saw something fall from space. But Sam's a nut. Nobody believes him. And they're like, okay, do you know where you can find him? He's like, I don't. Maybe the sheriff would. So they go and talk to the sheriff, and the sheriff's like, yeah, he took me out there. There's nothing out there. Sam's a drifter. He comes into town until he finds a job, and he drinks himself out of all his money, and then he leaves for a while, and he comes back. And then they cut to the CIA guy is briefing Robert Vaughn and says, yeah, there's a guy in this town who's going around telling everybody that he saw a spaceship. And Vaughn's like, well, does anybody believe him? And the CIA guy says, no, from what we can tell, everybody just thinks he's kind of a local, makes up tall tales, drunk type. He's like, but we should probably get him away from there just in case, because if he keeps talking, maybe somebody will believe him. And I'm like, okay, now, what is Vaughn going to suggest? Because this is an interesting thing with movies like this, is what is he going to jump to? Because, of course, the most sinister one is...
Or do they kill him, or do they take him in? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, and the CIA guy, interestingly, does not make a suggestion, just says, what do you want us to do? And Vaughn says, well, we have government contracts and work down there, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, just give him a job. Give him a job and get him out of there. Give him a job somewhere far away and just give him some work. And I'm like, okay.
That's a very 1950s approach.
That's why I'm like, okay, so Vaughn isn't just a let's bury him in the middle of nowhere. Because he could have. He's a drifter.
Yeah.
So they could have just killed him. And the CIA guy doesn't suggest it right away. So I'm like, okay, interesting. They're not making this out to be the, instantly scary black helicopter is going to kill everybody government. All right, let's see where this goes. So they do. They offer him a job, and then when the astronauts show up, they can't find him. And that's when the sheriff's like, well, they go back and they say, well, we can't find him. He's like, well, that happens. Sam comes in for a while, and he drinks till he's got no money, and then he leaves. And then we won't see him again for 3 months. So it's not anything out of the ordinary. And they're like, well, can you at least show us where he said the spacecraft was? And the guy's like, sure, I'll show you. So they drive him out. And they're being followed at this point by two people.
Yeah, has the government figured out yet that the astronauts are like on the trail?
Yes, they're watching where they're going to see what they're doing because they're not really sure, because again, you have to remember at the period of time this was, there are no cell phones, there are no computers, so they don't really know what they're doing yet. They're not sure if they're just, because when they land there, then they have an idea that they must have figured out where it generally was, but they don't know if they really know where it is. So this might be nothing. They might show up for a couple days, get nowhere, and leave. You know what I mean? So they're just keeping tabs. But then the sheriff takes them out to the crash site. And they go out to where the ship was, and they immediately notice that where the ground is scorched, somebody has just kind of covered it up with broken, kind of cut tree branches. Something that you would never notice because it's out in the middle of basically like dry Arizona desert with just like patchy trees. So if you didn't know to look, you would probably never notice it. It looks like everything else. But since they know to look for it, they look and they uncover it, and sure enough, there's this big blackened area where the ship had crashed. And one of them picks up a rock, and he's like, these two rocks are fused together. That's not something that would generally just happen. This has to be the result of the ship coming down. And the other guy says, well, I know a guy at a university who can analyze it and tell us. He's like, all right, well, let's take it to him. And so they start to leave, and the two government guys stop them.
Okay, I was going to say, why hasn't the government picked up these two yet?
Well, at this point, when they pick the rock up, because they're watching him, and the one guy says they've picked something up, and he says, what? He's like, I don't know, but he's got something. So when they come out, the two government guys come over and they say, hey, what are you guys doing here? He's like, oh, no, nothing. We're just kind of, walking around. Because they don't put together that they're necessarily government guys yet. And the two guys...
They haven't put together yet that they're in the middle of a conspiracy.
Correct.
And they're in trouble.
Yes, they don't figure that out for a little while. So the guys say, well, this is...
Where are we in the movie? Like halfway through?
Yeah, probably about the halfway point, I would say, at this point. So the guys say, well, this is a mining company land that we're doing experimental excavation on. So did you remove anything from here?
They don't know that they're government guys?
No, because they're not dressed. They're not in black suits with sunglasses. They're just a couple of guys in nice suits. But
got it.
It's not immediate. They don't show them ID or anything. Yeah. They just walk up to them and say, you guys are trespassing. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, the mining company owns this, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, well, we're sorry. We were just kind of wandering around. He's like, well, we're going to need anything that you removed. And he's like, what, this? It's just a rock. And he's like, yeah, but it's a rock from our land, so we're going to need that back. And they're like, okay. And they go to give it back, and then, of course, they knock him out, and they take the truck and run. And so when they take the truck and run, the two government guys get in their car, and they start chasing them. And they manage to they hit them and drive them off a bridge, and their car blows up, and it kill the two government guys. And then the one guy says so the one guy says to the other, we better not hang around for when the cops show up, and they leave. Then we cut back to the CIA guy informing Vaughn. He's like, what? Two government people are dead? How are we going to cover this up? That wasn't supposed to happen. You were just supposed to keep tabs on them. And he's like, all right, it's yes, you're right. Well, that's fine. I mean, we can keep that tight. And Vaughn's starting to lose his shit where he's like, this is getting out of control. And the CIA guy says, don't worry about it. I will make sure nothing else happens. And he's like, okay, you better, because, you told me that this would not be a big deal, and already we've got a problem. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Right. So now we cut back to the hangar. And in the hangar now, they've dissected the bodies. And when they took the clothing off, I'm looking at them and I'm like, okay, that guy's got nipples. He looks like a man. You maybe should have done some makeup to make this less that this was a humanoid person. Like, it's okay that they're humanoids, I guess, but he looks like a human being that you stuck in a spaceship. So I'm like, there's little things where I'm like, okay, that's something where maybe the makeup crew should have given him gills or something.
Yeah, you want them to do a little bit more on that.
Right. So, but okay, fine. So they start to dissect him. And, but meanwhile, in the ship now, the engineer is kind of poking and prying at things. And at one point he pulls something and the ship starts to take off and he immediately shuts it back off. And Night Stalker comes in and goes, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, hey man, I can't tell you what this thing is doing if you don't let me touch it. He's like, I'm going to have to play around a little bit. And Night Stalker's like, okay, you're right.
I'm sorry. That line, you said that line and my brain immediately went, that's what she said.
Well, yeah. Hey, most vessels are referred to as women, so indeed. But
go on.
So Night Stalker's like, you're right. I mean, I do need answers on what this thing does. He's like, just be careful what you're doing. Make sure you at least have an idea maybe of what's going to happen, or at least warn us. And the guy's like, okay, that makes sense. Meanwhile, the linguist has been looking all over the ship, and he says, and at one point he pulls Night Stalker over and he says, look, I'm kind of putting something together. Some of these symbols looked familiar to me. So he gets out probably Encyclopedia Britannica, and he opens up and he shows him one of these, famous Machu Picchu kind of carvings on the ground. The space writing where you can see it from the air.
Wait, are these the engineers?
Ah, yes, sort of. So he says,
because you know what? When I look at that picture now, they do seem like broke ass versions of the engineers.
Yeah, don't they? So he says, these symbols look an awful lot like some of these land carvings that we can see, and you can only see them from the air. So I think, at this point, he's not necessarily jumping straight to that's what it is, but he says there does seem to be some kind of relationship here. And Night Stalker's like, all right, keep working. See if you can get the computer. Now that you have a starting point, see if you can get a language out of it. He's like, I think I can, because now that I have a relational thing on Earth, I can start to see if I can correspond some letters and numbers. Like, all right, go for it.
Like a Rosetta Stone, yeah.
Exactly, yes. I think he actually may say Rosetta Stone type of thing. So now we cut back to the astronauts. They've met with this professor, and they showed him the rock, and he's like, yep. He's like, fusing rocks like this would take a tremendous amount of heat. And so the astronauts say, okay, so then this is proof that this ship exists. And he's like, well, no, there are other things that can do this. He's like, if you're going to go to the press and tell them that you have proof of an alien spaceship, you're going to need more than a fused rock. He's like, it's certainly a possibility, but this is not proof. You're going to need proof.
Could you imagine what the death toll would already be if this was a modern movie?
Oh, yeah. No, there would have been explosions and helicopter chases and rockets and everything. Michael Bay would have a field day. That's what I mean about this is a very kind of a different era type of film. Because you know what? This point...
Just to give you like an example why I'm saying this, I just watched Transformers 3 with my son. Right?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
He loves Transformers.
First 20 minutes are probably 50 people dead, right?
And that one's all about how basically the moon mission was them going to investigate the Transformers ship.
Dark of the Moon, right?
That's Dark of the Moon, and now it's a big conspiracy, and they've known all along. And then Leonard Nimoy is the fucking Sentinel Prime, and like that movie ends in such a like. A city is being torn apart, and Transformers are getting limbs ripped off, and I just think like the Bayham compared to what you're watching, which seems to be so not polite, but
different film, much more restrained approach to storytelling.
Yes, very restrained. Yes.
So basically he's like, what you have here is proof of something very high temperature fusing these rocks. He says, but beyond that, you don't have proof of anything. So they're like, all right, well, maybe we could still do something. Maybe we can still go to the press. Maybe we can still figure something out with this. So they go to leave, at which point they are now being chased by two more government guys. But this time the government guys start shooting at them. So we
aren't they supposed to just watch them?
Well, so what we got was a phone call with the CIA guy to somebody, and this is where I wasn't sure if this was the turning point of the movie, because he says, make sure these guys do not talk to anybody else or, do anything else that can compromise this. And he says, I'm leaving this in your hands. And I'm like, okay, that's a very specific type of phrasing. Does he mean that you can kill them, or is he just going to try to detain them? So they chase them into this giant petrochemical plant, and I'm like, uh-oh, gas trucks. I'm like, is this the point where this movie starts to become something else? And so they chase him in there, and the two guys get out of the truck, and they're running, and then one of the guys shoots at them, and he's like, holy shit, they're shooting at us. So he's like, I got an idea, and they grab a gas truck, and he's like, they're not going to shoot at this because they'll blow the whole plant up, and they take off in the gas truck. And the two guys get into their car, and they start chasing them. And they're staying on them, and the one guy is like, I don't know what the hell we're gonna do, man. They're staying on us. These guys are not playing around. They're gonna kill us. And the other guy's like, I have an idea. And so he starts to crawl along the side of the truck, and the other guy is like, get the hell in here. What are you doing? He's like, I have a plan. He grabs a flare.
Oh, hold on. Out of curiosity, is this the Redford one or the
portly
chubby
guy?
one?
No, the portly guy. The portly guy's climbing on the truck, and the other guy's like, get the hell in here. What are you doing? So he climbs to the back of the truck with the flare, and he opens up the gas thing that lets the gas out. And I'm like, okay, he's going to blow the car up. I see where this is. I don't know if this is feasible or not, but this is what he's trying to do. And he goes to light the flare, at which point he gets shot. And he gets the flare off, and he blows the car up and then falls off the truck. And so Redford stops the truck and gets out and runs over to him. And now cars are stopping. So I like that too. People are stopping all over the place because a car just blew up, and there's a guy who got shot laying on the ground. So I'm like, okay, at least this isn't a movie where somehow people ignore the fact that a car just blew up on a major highway. Good, they're stopping. And there's kids looking and crying and shit. It's all realistic on what if this were to happen. And so he grabs the guy, and I'm like, okay, is the guy going to live? Because I like the guy, and he dies. And I'm like, oh, fuck, because now it's just Redford on his own. And now I'm starting to think, because this is now, I don't know, now we're getting past the halfway point of the movie, and now I'm starting to worry that we're going to turn into Parallax View, where the government's going to just kill everybody. I'm like, is this going to result in just everybody getting erased because now it's leaked out into the public? What's going to happen? Because if they're going to kill this guy, then anybody can get killed. And the thing is, at this point, you are very clearly made aware that Night Stalker doesn't know what's going on outside the hangar. He has no awareness of the fact that these two guys are running around and being shot at. And then he's in the spaceship with the engineer, and the engineer manages to tap into, he hears music. He's like, what is this music? Is this alien music? He's like, no, it's a local radio station. I managed to figure out how to make the radio work, which is kind of funny. He's like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, the sound just sounds a little weird in the spaceship from what their speakers are. And he's starting to walk away when he hears a news report that an astronaut got killed. He's like, what? So he calls the general, and he says,
like, these are my fucking people.
Yeah, he's like, what the fuck is going on out there? And the general's like, I don't know. I'm trying to find out. He's like, look, if I don't see the other guy here tomorrow morning, I'm going to the press. And that's the big fucking problem now, because the general immediately calls Vaughn and says, we have a problem. He's going to go to the press. I know you cannot scare Night Stalker. He will do it. If he thinks his guys are being threatened, it's over with. Now, at this point, right before they got into the gas truck, the two astronauts were talking about, okay, if the government took the spaceship, where would they put it? They wouldn't go far with it. Is there any place around here that would be able to store a ship? And the both of them say, oh, yeah, the lunar whatever hangar 18. So they know where it is. So he's heading there, the Redford. That's where they were going when the government was after him. And so he makes it to the base and kind of blows through the checkpoint. Now he's running around, and base security's looking for him, and he's hiding in this warehouse, at which point Night Stalker comes in and says, hey, what the hell's going on? And he's like, well, they killed Lou. He's like, all right, I know Lou's dead. Come in here. We'll figure it out. Meanwhile, Vaughn and the CIA guy and the general are there, and they're in a room, and the general's like, I told you we should have brought them in. This is happening because you didn't listen to me. We could have trusted them. They work with us. And Vaughn's like, you know what? That's all well and good, but we're past that point. The CIA guy says, okay, well, here's what it is. If we don't put a stop to this now, forget the presidency, we're going to prison, and not for a couple of months. We have
so now it's their ass that they're covering.
He's like, now we're in this.
Yeah, so now everybody's dead.
So Vaughn says, well, what can we do about it? He says, well, planes crash every day, even on military bases. And the general just looks miserable. Like he's going to go along with it, but he knows what they're talking about, which is just basically blowing up the hangar. And so I'm like, oh, fuck. All right. They've already killed the one guy. And, now, because until the first 2 agents died, I'm like, this is very bloodless so far. So this may actually work out. But once the 2 guys died, and even at first, when Vaughn was pissed about it, but saying that it was really the CIA's fault, I'm still like, okay. But then once they started shooting at them, I knew. I'm like, nope, now we're talking about lethal force. It's over with. This is no longer, when the first 2 guys died, it was kind of an accident. Like they were bashing into them, and then they lost control of the car and went off a bridge. So you can explain that away as an accident. You know what I mean? It's still relatively somewhat safe zone. But as soon as they started shooting, and then once the guy got shot and died, because if he had survived even, I'd be like, okay, they're shooting at them, but nobody's really died yet. But once he died, I'm like, fuck, all bets are off now. So sure enough, they take a Learjet and they put a remote control apparatus into it, and they load it with a gigantic bomb. And the thing takes off, and it's heading towards the hangar. So Night Stalker's in there, and the doctor comes up to him, and the linguist now comes up to him, and they're like, yeah, we figured a few things out. The doctor says, it's interesting. They have the same organs we do. And in fact, they have everything the same as us, just developed slightly differently. And he's like, really? Well, what does that mean? And he's like, well, and she says, as far as we can determine, these are not different species. We are offshoots of them. And the linguist comes in and says, yeah, we are their descendants. They were here before and they left. And these pictures they're showing of the different areas, they're coming back. These are landing areas. When you decode it, it says landing zones. So they're coming back to the planet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit, this is fucking Prometheus. Like this is exactly what this is. This is Prometheus, 30 years prior. Same idea where they are, because they had a woman that was abducted, and they had all these images of like animals and everything. And it was because they were studying the evolution of the species, but you don't really find out why. You just know that they've been keeping track of us and they were coming back. Because the other thing is the engineer at one point says to Night Stalker, he's like, you know what? I don't know everything about this ship, but I can tell you something. This cannot do interstellar travel. And Night Stalker says, what does that mean? He's like, it means this is a scout ship that came from a bigger vessel.
Oh.
Yeah, he's like, this is something that went out here to see what was going on. That's why it was hovering up there when the satellite.
This is a we might be in trouble ship.
Yeah. At this point, but Night Stalker at no point ever sees it as a trouble thing. He's always like, this is great. This is like we're finding things out, which again is sort of unusual. But now the fucking plane's coming at him, right? And this is so the last discovery is the landing zone thing. So the linguist comes out of the ship because he was trying to figure out what because they found the images of the different areas, and then there was wording across the bottom and they couldn't figure it out. So Night Stalker says, get your shit in here and tell me what that says, because it sure as hell looks like they might be trying to shoot us or something. So he's like, all right, I'll find out. So he's in there. He's like, hey, Night Stalker, get in here. You got to see this. So Night Stalker, Robert Redford, the 2 doctors, the engineer, all go into the ship, and they're watching the thing about the landing site. And right before that, I had thought, okay, the plane's about to hit the hangar.
They're going to end up, the ship's going to protect them.
The only way out is if the ship protects them. So sure enough, they go in the ship, and the plane lands, and it blows the fuck out of everything. Like it's a big bomb. To the point where I went, oh man, I don't know if that ship's going to be there. Because at first, when you see the shots, the ship is not there. So you're not really sure. And then there's a shot of the ship, but you don't see anybody. So I'm like, oh man, did the ship survive? But they didn't somehow, because the door in the front was open. So, I mean, it's not inconceivable the fire could have gotten in there. But then the movie just freeze frames, and it says, it's a news report, and it says, there was a major explosion at an Air Force base yesterday. U.S. official or Army officials have still not given a definite answer. However, mission control officer, blah, 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 has a press conference scheduled for 8 a.m., and we'll bring you that live when it happens. And then the movie ends. And I'm like, this fucking movie was great. So they survived, and they're going to blow the whole thing open. So the government lost. Wow. Which I wasn't, I thought that, I thought the news report was going to say there were no survivors. Army recovery officials found the bodies of blah, 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 blah. and that was going to be them going in there and killing whoever survived. That's what I thought. But no, they're alive. They survived in the ship. You don't see the press conference, but it says
not only that, though, there's a whole fucking other ship. There's a whole bunch of shit out there just waiting for them.
Right.
No,
and it does mention the spacecraft. It says something like, survived by hiding in an alien craft.
That's a great flick.
I like it a lot. I mean, it doesn't have great reviews.
No, but the concepts are great.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff that I think people have a problem with not being explained all the way because they don't explain everything.
Well, welcome to the real world.
Yeah, I really don't care. I still like it. I actually thought it was a very good.
Cool.
Yeah, it did enough right that I really enjoyed it. It's definitely a older type of film. So it's one where you just have to put up with the age of it.
It feels very golden age.
Correct. And then so you just have to bear with that.
Honestly, it's a 70s movie. I know it came out in 1980, but that's a 70s movie.
It is a 70s movie except for the optimism of the end. The government did try to kill them.
When did the end of the benign alien movies happen?
Oh man. Well, Alien was 79, so
yeah, so I wonder if 79-80 is the crossover.
Well, honestly, yeah, because Close Encounters of the Third Kind is an optimistic one. E.T. is the big one.
Yep.
You do have those movies, so
yeah.
Well,
I guess you know what? Maybe aliens were just big at that point.
Well, it's waxed and waned over time. I mean, even in the height of the 50s, where you had all the alien attack movies, but you still had stuff like The Day the Earth Stood Still, where ultimately it's us who are the terrible people. The aliens are not. That is not a movie about scary aliens. Groot is scary because he's so powerful, but the only reason he does anything is because they attack the person who's with him. He's a defense weapon.
I find that I would love a sequel to a movie like Hangar 18.
Not Groot, Gort.
Gort, yeah.
Or Klaatu.
I would love a
Klaatu.
sequel to
Jesus
a
Christ.
movie like Hangar 18 because I'm so curious, in the vein of a movie like this, what in that universe happens next?
Well, that is the interesting part, is that you don't really know what will happen after this. There is no, and what happens when they come back, because the ship itself, it's interesting the way that it does little things that
can you
explain
to these aliens that it was an accident? If they are like us, will they understand human error?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did leave out one thing.
What's that?
So it was not the impact of the satellite that killed them, because the ship is completely unharmed. The engineer says it could not have been the impact. The ship is completely invulnerable to any type of shock.
Oh,
and that's, sorry, I forgot about this part.
So then what the hell killed them?
They see that there's a little thing on the ground, a broken piece of glass with powder in it. And essentially it is how astronauts, they always said, were given a capsule with cyanide in case they got stuck?
Yeah.
It's that. And when the impact happened, it got knocked out and it broke. And so they died from basically cyanide. Essentially alien cyanide.
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, but okay.
It is, but it does relate back to the idea.
I would expect that they would put those things in safer places.
Yeah, I think that's to kind of have the mystery driven. That's my guess, is that was to have the mystery of what killed them, and so that you might think it was the impact, but it wasn't, and it sets up, well, why does the ship look perfectly fine? Blah blah blah. It's the logic does not. Again, you go back to the idea of why would you plant a story in the newspaper that says the two other astronauts killed the third one? That right there is you created this scenario by being stupid. If you had simply said mechanical error, and then when the astronauts said, well, what about the alien? They had simply said...
the mistake was not bringing the astronauts in.
Well, that's number one, but even if you're going to keep on the outside, then have the general say, look, right now, we're not sure what the public reaction is because we don't know if this is something that was a weapon or what. Just keep it under your hat because... A normal person, if you believed in the government, which, astronauts you would think were probably inclined to do, they would, talking to somebody they think they can trust, would say, yep, that makes sense. We don't want a mass panic until we know what we're dealing with. So that is probably going to take a couple of weeks. It's not like he said 2 years. He was talking, they could have said, we just need a few weeks, maybe a month to study this thing and see if it's a weapon. Because if it is, we don't know what we're in for. And if it's not, then at least we can tell people that and it won't be a panic. And most normal people in the government, who again believe in it, would probably say, that makes sense, sir. Thank you very much. As opposed to, why are we being blamed for the death of our friend? What was that? And that's, so you have to accept certain things. So the vial being broken is way after the glaring thing of, well, why would you have created this story in the newspaper that you would assume that they might have read, So, yeah. But like I said, the thing that's actually best about it is the acting is fantastic. Everybody in it is really good. So all the other stuff you just kind of push aside. And the spaceship, externally, it looks pretty doofy, I have to admit. It's not a great spaceship design. It kind of looks like a vacuum attachment. But inside, it looks real. It almost, when I saw the aliens and thought of Dune, when you see the interior design, you would almost think that it was David Lynch who did the inside design. Because it's a very interesting interior design to it that looks so different from the external part. It's hard to really, I can't convey it without you seeing pictures of it, but the inside looks really interesting and neat and alien. The outside looks like a child made a UFO. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's not a good exterior.
What do you expect it to look like down to some
Well,
degree,
I think part of it is because they built it practically. So they basically had to make it, because they at one point are standing around it at full size. Mm-hmm. So, at that time, no CG, I don't think this was a tremendously big budget movie. So they probably put the money into the people, which is actually where it should be because they're the reason to watch it. And the interior is really cool looking. Like the interior is actually very interesting. So if you're going to choose between, and they spend most of the time inside it. So if you're going to go with which one you have to prioritize, make it the inside. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I'm just saying, if you look at the outside and the inside, you would think it was two different people, and maybe it was, designing those, because the interior is much cooler.
Also, to some degree, you're assuming design based on your own bias when it comes to spaceship design. I mean, what the fuck do we know what advanced technology would look like? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. No, yeah. Like I said, I don't really care because the interior looks really good. And so I don't care if the outside could be very workmanlike. Sure. It doesn't matter. But I liked it. I thought it was a good movie. I'm not going to tell you it's a great movie because, it does, there's going to be an audience for it.
No, but you know what? It's got some great ideas.
Yeah, it surprised me where it ended up. And that's the thing is I kind of didn't, when I saw the people, because you know how I said the thing about, okay, guys, get better makeup. That's because my assumption was that it's supposed to be aliens, not our our ancestors or predecessors. So then it made sense. Then, because at first when they're starting, before they diagnose them, they're like, well, they appear to be bipedal. We won't know till we get into them, but they certainly appear humanoid, but that could be, we could open them up and they could, who knows? And Night Stalker's like, yeah, probably, he's like, yeah, it is interesting that they're humanoid. And she's like, yeah, but, who knows?
No, but it becomes really interesting when you're like, no, they're us evolved and they're coming back.
And something that doesn't get translated properly in me explaining the movie, but is done very effectively in the film, is the discovery and the kind of revealing of information is really well done. It is paced very well from knowing nothing and the steps. Because then there's one point where the engineer accidentally activates a laser that fires through a bunch of shit and immediately comes out. Night Stalker does it, not the engineer. Night Stalker comes out. He's like, Jesus Christ, is everybody all right? And he's like, yeah, but man, you're supposed to warn us, remember? And it's like, yeah, sorry. But then they're looking at the laser blast. He's like, holy shit, it went right through this thing. And he's like, oh, the applications, that could be, because of course there would be weapons on it.
Yeah.
So the way that they kind of uncover things, and like I said, the one of the things I liked was the point where Night Stalker's like, don't touch anything. And eventually the engineer's like, well, I can't discover anything about this if I can't touch anything. Like, you're going to have to figure out where you're going to let me do something. Otherwise, I'm useless to you. He basically says something to the effect of, if I can't touch anything, I might as well leave. Because what am I going to discover just looking at it?
What is the point? Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and then the linguist kind of putting it together and at first being like, I have no frame of reference, and then figuring out that something was familiar and looking at that. And yeah, it's a good movie. I think it's a fun time to watch if you're into this kind of stuff. You know, and you want to see good acting, which there is a lot of. You know, the effects are what you would expect out of a movie of this type. It's from 1980. But I thought it was really good. You know, if you can tolerate the age of it. Some people can't. There's you know, it is now a 43-year-old movie. So, you know, I think it's worth watching if you're into conspiracy UFO films and want one that actually does seem to have some optimism.
I don't think it's a conspiracy movie. I think that it's just a really interesting movie that happens to have a conspiracy in it.
Well, sure. Yeah, no, yeah, that's fine. Or a UFO mystery movie.
Yeah,
or
because
a
there's
UFO
a lot. There
discovery
seems to be
movie.
a lot more to it.
Oh, they're definitely. Like I said, one thing I really like about it is the fact that there's like the parallel stories, which is the two astronauts trying to determine what's going on, and then the team inside that. And I think this was a smart storytelling decision. Is they have no awareness until the very end of what's going on outside the hangar. They're so consumed by what they're given essentially to explore, and that allows that part of the story to be completely focused on the science. Like, what would you do if you're leading this team? And, you know, Night Stalker's kind of managing everybody. So his enthusiasm is great because he keeps telling everybody, yeah, tell me what you need. I'll get it for you. What do I, you know, give me this answer. I want to know what happened. And so that part of it, again, it does feel like it is a movie about an actual event and they're recreating it because they're cutting back and forth with like the times and locations and stuff. I like all that. So I had a good time with it. Like I said, you know, the only detriment to it is a very, as you said, kind of golden age type of movie, which there aren't big action set pieces. There's no gunfights. You're not going to see UFOs blasting each other or anything like that. There's no
it's
no
a
alien
sandbaggers.
invasion.
So it's much more of a sandbaggers movie.
And there is an ending, and there also isn't an ending because then the speculation is, well, what would happen after that? And we don't have that answer. And as far as I know, there was never a plan. I couldn't find anything indicating that there was going to be a sequel or anything. This was just kind of almost what feels like a short story, a science fiction story by, say, Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke that was made into a movie. Because this feels like a book. But as far as I can tell, it is not based on a book. Yeah, I don't see anything. And what else is interesting is that this movie came out before the space shuttles actually flew. They were planning to, so it wasn't like it was secret knowledge. It wasn't a Hunt for Red October type of scenario. Because if you read about what Tom Clancy was debriefed by the Army, or the Navy, I guess, because they were like, how do you know some of this stuff? And he's like, people talk to me. And there is an alternate ending, which I can't find what exactly it is, but on TV it was called Invasion Force and had a different ending, which makes me think that the alternate ending is that there was an invasion or something. But I don't know what the alternate... Maybe it's on Wikipedia. I didn't look on there. Does it say the alternate ending? Yeah, I can't find it. Yeah, I don't know what the alternate ending is. I'm curious about that.
Sorry, I'm just looking to see if there's any reference to the source material.
Oh, new ending undermines the whole film. Wait, okay, hold on a minute. Where do they talk about what it is? Leonard Maltin's review. Oh, geez, that's so old you can't even find it. What is the alternate ending? But if he says undermines, that makes me think that that either they did all die or that there was an invasion. Alternate ending. That's the only thing I didn't get to look up before we recorded. I meant to look up what it is.
As Invasion Force. Yeah, so the alternate ending was titled Invasion Force, yeah.
That's what makes me think that... Okay, hold on, this might tell you. Scenes, yeah. Does it say? No. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about the alternate ending, which sucks. I'm just curious. I mean, I have a feeling they just went with the cheap. It
sounds like they died,
or that there was then there was an invasion. Yeah, it just keeps referring. Everybody refers to the alternate ending, but it doesn't actually say. You know what? Wait a minute.
Hold on. I found it. After the airplane crashed into the hangar, you heard the news report saying that there was an accident, and this was it. It left you believing that everyone in the hangar died. In the alternate ending I saw on television, the news report was changed. Basically, they gave it as a happy ending, saying that several people survived the crash, claimed to have been shielded by an alien spacecraft. So yes, the original ending, they kill everybody.
And that explains, because the last shot of the movie, the freeze frame is of the ship, but like I said, there's no people visible. So that allows you to then make up whatever. And that's why I thought, okay, they're going to say that everybody died because the military went in and killed them all. Not that we would have seen that or they would have said that, but that would have been inferred was, okay, they realized people survived and killed them because the last shot is just the ship with the door open. So that makes sense. I prefer the one I watched because it's optimistic and it's also, I think, supposed to be a bit of a commentary because there is the big thing where Vaughn talks about the president and how much money he's putting into the military. Which does because when that happened, I went, okay, there's the ulterior motive to keep the ship secret to develop a weapon.
The military wants to keep him in there because he's feeding,
Exactly. So that would, and then their actions at the end would reinforce that. Because for a while, you don't think that's it. It doesn't, because again, the fact that Vaughn doesn't or the CIA again does not immediately say, well, if you want to do this the real secure way, we have to liquidate everybody. But then later in the film, once they realize the cat's out of the bag, and it's about to blow up.
Well, yeah, once they realize they might actually get burned, then it's, okay, we got to cover our ass.
Well, I remember there's a particular line, because it reminded me of Blade Runner, where he says, replicants are like any other machine. They're a benefit or a hazard. If it's a benefit, it's not my problem. The CIA guy says something that it isn't at all the same, but it reminded me of it, where he says, because Vaughn says something like, well, how do we solve this problem? And the CIA guy just kind of looks up at the two of them and says, as long as Hangar 18 exists, the problem exists. And that is immediately when I knew what was coming next. Because I'm like, okay, I know what that means from the CIA. So Sure enough. Like I said, I thought it was really good. This is not a case of me saying a bad movie is good or anything like that. I think this is a legitimately good film. I just think that for some people, it won't be tolerable because of its age. And it's just a different type of filmmaking where it's slow and deliberate. Not slow as in boring, but it's very methodical. And there are not going to be... There's a couple car chases, but they're not Bullet or Mad Max type car chases. They're pretty pedestrian.
No, it's A-Team.
Of what happens. Yes.
It's A-Team's tough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I liked it. Like you said, it has the clever bits. The mystery is compelling because it's presented very real world. Okay, this thing crashed. There was no information about it. And they're starting from scratch and, what's going on. So that's compelling. And then the other side is you're following these astronauts who are trying to figure out what's going on. So there's two sets of mysteries from completely different viewpoints that are obviously going to resolve in the same way, in the same place. And they're both interesting to watch because everybody involved in them is doing good acting. And the writing is kind of clever and there's some neat stuff that, again, is surprising and sort of, okay, you think it's this, but it's not, it's that. And again, the Prometheus thing is fascinating because it is definitely Ancient Aliens type shit. So I thought it was very good. So if you're into that type of stuff, and again, you can put up with the fact that it's definitely a movie of a different time. Not a movie of a different time in any, amazingly, no offensive ways. There's no racism, sexism, homophobia. There's nothing like that. That's great. So that's actually refreshing, is to have a movie that's this old, that they're like the female doctor is deferred to as the expert. Like there is no minimizing, because when the guy and girl both showed up at the same time, I went, okay, I kind of see where this is going to be. He's going to be the lead. She's going to be the assistant. No, she is completely as competent and respected as everybody else. So I was like, okay, that's good. This is already a cut above some stuff I've watched from this era, which is horrific. So on top of that, the fact that I think it is actually a good movie and interesting is all the better. So again, not necessarily for everybody, but a clean, I would recommend watching it, just being aware of when it's from in terms of the actual filmmaking techniques, so the technical aspects. Everything else I think is, and even the effects with the models, I like models, I like miniatures, I'm okay with that. And the interior of the ship is cool looking. Like that, whoever did that did some really nice design work. So there is stuff that is visually also compelling. And that's it. That's all I got. Just one review because I actually came out at the end so happy about seeing the movie because I really wasn't sure. Because I didn't know. I mean, a movie from 1980 can go either way. It's, it's hard to say. And I didn't read anything that said it was, either so bad it's good or, has some kind of amazing thing.
It just doesn't sound like a 1980s movie.
It doesn't. And a lot of the reviews they kind of skip over the interesting parts. I guess because just people wanted it to be big. Maybe it's, I sometimes think with movies like this, people get this retroactive view of them because they expect everything to be Close Encounters, Spielberg grandiosity.
Yeah.
Not everything can be that. This is a perfectly good little film. And I think it's interesting and it's got some fun ideas that you get to watch be explored. And it has a non-miserable ending, which is nice.
Different.
Yeah, that part I really enjoyed. It. Not everybody got fucking. I was really bummed out that the one astronaut died. I have to admit that bummed me out. But
it's kind of their wash moment, isn't it?
Yeah, they have to do it because then then you just don't know who's going to be alive. So at that point, yeah, it's. I know why they have to do it, but it was still a bummer, which is good because it means I like the character. So, and he was the funny one.
Despite the fact that he was the most out of shape astronaut.
Yes, a guy who I would not be convinced could have run to catch any type of vehicle had he needed to have his life depend on it. So, but those are minor things on a movie. Otherwise, I had a lot of fun with. So, that's it. That's the show. That's my review. Go watch Hangar 18. It's fun. Other than that, we will talk to you again next week. Have a good weekend. Go watch something fun. Watch Hangar 18 or anything else. Doesn't matter. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.